to understand or share in the feelings of one another. I am curious what this behavior tells you about chimpanzees' empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at first, when I was reading about these cases of what we call pro-social or other-directed care, I assumed they were going to be between mothers and infants, say, or close genetically related kin. But we didn't find that. We found that there was actually lots of cases of chimps helping unrelated members of their community, which, as you said, has sort of more implications for empathy being involved or some form of attentiveness to the health-related needs of others, and then the ability to transfer the skills that one might apply to oneself to others.
Do you have evidence of whether these empathetic behaviors were learned or whether they were instinctual?
We don't know yet. It's still an open question. What I tend to believe is that there is a mixture of instinct and, genetically encoded tendencies towards certain behaviors. And then there is also mixed in an aspect of social learning. It's likely a mixture, but I think that what's so cool about this topic is that it's still relatively new, the study of animal self-medication and animal, medicine generally. And there's still a lot of open questions in the field that are waiting for researchers to come and look into them more.
Elodie, just listening to you speak reminds me so much of this question that I think many humans have been wondering about for a long time, and that is whether chimps think and feel the way humans do. We share more than 98% of our DNA as humans with chimpanzees. Why is it important to study them?
I think that we have a tendency to think of ourselves as incredibly unique and incredibly more advanced than all of the other non-human animals that we share this planet with. And I think the more we study the behaviors of animals, the more we realize that there are cognitive abilities, there are skill sets, there are toolkits that we have in common with them. We're not as unique as we like to think. That's very humbling. And many animals actually have a lot of knowledge about the natural world that we don't have because we've taken ourselves out of these habitats, and they can lead us to incredible medicinal resources that we might otherwise have never found. So I think that we have to start treating these animals more like our teachers.
Elodie Fryman is a London-based primatologist. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Asma Khalid.
And I'm Scott Tong, like 5-6 feet away from you. So good to have you, Asma, here in studio in Washington.
Thanks for allowing me to play in this space. The latest news is next, and you've been listening to Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston, where the program is produced, and Viking, dedicated to creating travel experiences for the thinking person, with programs designed for cultural enrichment on board and on shore. Learn more at Viking.com.
Public radio is in uncharted waters. The Trump administration has issued an executive order to stop federal funding for NPR. That money supports fact-based news and information, along with vital emergency resources. Find out how you can...
Good afternoon and welcome to this session of City Council for Monday, May 19th at 2 o'clock p.m. City Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video streamed through Facebook Live at facebook.com, Roanoke, VA. City Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf and hard of hearing. So at this time, I'll ask our clerk, Ms. McCoy, to please call the roll.
Mr. Volleson.
Here.
Ms. Powers.
Here.
Mr. Hagan.
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
And Mayor Cobb.
Here, and a quorum is present. In a moment, I'm going to invite Reverend Terry Kemp to provide our invocation, and then following that, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But I would like for us all to stand, and then I'm going to share a moment of silence request. As we begin this afternoon, I'd like to invite us to pause for a moment of silence in memory of Susan Reese, who passed away on May 12, 2025. Susan previously served as a city representative on the Human Services Advisory Board and as the Family Service Manager for the Department of Social Services. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Reverend Kemp.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you for this day and the many blessings you bestow upon each of us. We thank you for this opportunity to live and serve in this wonderful city with the talents and abilities you've given each of us. We ask your blessing on each member of this council and city leaders and their responsibilities to represent all citizens of this city in a professional and unbiased manner. We pray for wisdom and vision in our efforts to continue progress to benefit this community for your glory. Let us acknowledge the importance of each viewpoint expressed here today so that we may partner together in our efforts to achieve ongoing success. We pray for your divine inspiration for decisions made in this chamber today and in the days to come to inspire us to pursue even greater achievements as the city of Roanoke continues to be a leading example of civic progress and sustained growth. May each of us continue to approach our daily responsibilities with integrity, honor, and a desire for excellence to benefit the citizens of this great city. Almighty God, we also humbly ask to keep your protective hand around the safety of all in our city. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Reverend Kemp. A couple of announcements today. The Council of the City of Roanoke is seeking applications for various vacancies on council-appointed authorities, boards, commissions, and committees. Please access the city's website at roanokeva.gov to complete an online application. Now we're going to move into presentations and acknowledgments, and we'll begin with our council shout-outs from the last couple of weeks. So I will start with Ms. Powers today.
I have a couple of shout outs. One is shout out to Local Colors for doing the Local Colors Festival this weekend and bringing us all together with over 110 different places, nationalities. It was great. The second thing I'd just like to say, and I'm glad to see our Fire-EMS people here, the Treasurers Association of Virginia had one of our first training sessions here in Roanoke. Customer service, we used the Fire-EMS Training Center. It was absolutely wonderful. And those people out there helped us set everything up. It was absolutely wonderful. But we brought people here from all over the state of Virginia. They stayed in our hotels and they ate in our restaurants and they loved downtown. So thank you, Fire-EMS, for everything that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Mr. Bollison?
I will also shout out Local Colors, in particular Lisa Spencer, the executive director, and all the volunteers and staff that helped put that together. I also want to give a shout out to the Roanoke Diversity Center. They had their annual event yesterday at Fishburne Mansion, which was looking nice. It's going to look even better in a few years, hopefully. It was great to celebrate the wonderful work they do, making sure that we have an equal and inclusive city here in Roanoke.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
Yeah. Saturday, I attended the Gainsboro block party. That was an awesome time. You go to my Facebook, you'll see some pictures of me in the big old bubble foam sprayer thing. I don't know what you really call it, but and them bubbles was deep. I fell in. I didn't mean to go that deep, but I ended up going all the way. That was a great time, so thank you to all those that made that happen, and all our folks that work, particularly at the Gainsboro Library. The manager and the team there are always awesome anytime I have to interact with them, and so I thank them for all they do.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to say thank you to everyone that helped organize Local Colors. I had a really good time, and then there was a lot going on this weekend. I wasn't able to make it to the Gainsboro Street Festival, but want to say thank you to everyone that organized that. And then also Compost Fest was this weekend, so it was a really busy weekend, and I hope everyone had fun. I had a friend in town, and we went down to Wasena after Local Colors, and just talked about, she was visiting from Richmond, how lucky we are to have so many outdoor places to eat and hang out that are connected to downtown. And so I just want to say thanks to everyone that runs our Parks and Recs department and keeps our outdoor spaces looking great. Everyone helping get that Wasena Bridge back up and going ASAP. We are excited for that. And thanks to everyone that helped put on festivals every weekend. It seems like there's something going on in Roanoke. So I feel really fortunate to live here. Had a great weekend and hope you did too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
I was happy that we had a wonderful Saturday. The weather was beautiful, and I was able to enjoy Local Colors and the Gainsboro Festival, which it is growing. So I thank both organizations for all the work they did to put the festivals together. And on the city side, I would like to say thanks to Miss Katie Hedrick for leading the city in being a welcoming city. So Saturday was just a good example of how welcoming we are. So thank you, Ms. Hedrick.
Thank you. Mr. Hagan?
Yeah, I'm also going to shout out all three events that we just talked about. So the Local Colors, Gainsboro Block Party, as well as Compost Fest. I was able to run around like a madman and go to all three. But, you know, they were all great events, and it's good to see that the Gainsboro Neighborhood Organization is helping to grow their block party.
Oh, Mr. Hagan, thank you for providing K-pop.
Well, thank you all. I will echo those things. Apparently, there are some videos of me floating around on social media, line dancing.
Yep.
I would encourage you not to share them. I'm still learning. But I also want to highlight something very special that happened Saturday morning prior to all of these things starting. The City of Roanoke, in collaboration with the Gun Violence Prevention Commission, has started an initiative called Planting Peace. And working with the Roanoke Tree Stewards and Parks and Recreation, 10 trees have been planted, 5 in Perry Park and 5 in Horton Park. And throughout the summer, we'll be gathering on different Saturdays to commemorate those trees. And this Saturday, we commemorated 2 of those trees. These commemorations are for cold cases. In other words, these are people who died from gun violence whose cases have not been solved. And we recognized Renee Penn and Renee Taylor and Tracy Penn honored their brother and their father, who both died from gun violence several decades ago. And it was a very moving ceremony and a really pretty incredible turnout. So just my thanks to the Gun Violence Prevention Commission, the City of Roanoke, Parks and Rec, and Tree Stewards, and everyone who's helped to make that possible. All right, we have a couple of proclamations today. I'm going to head down to the podium, and for the first one, I'll ask Ross Campbell, our Director of Public Works, to join me. This is a proclamation acknowledging National Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, fleet equipment, solid waste, and services that are vital to creating sustainable and resilient communities and are essential to the public health, safety, high quality of life, and overall well-being of the people of the city of Roanoke. Whereas these services could not be delivered without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, including engineers, managers, operators, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our transportation systems, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other critical facilities. Whereas it is in the public interest for residents, civic and business leaders, and youth in the city of Roanoke to gain knowledge of and maintain a continuing interest in the vital role that public works plays in our daily lives. And whereas the year 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association with the theme People, Purpose, Presence, highlighting the inspiring people who serve their communities with purpose and dedication every day. Now therefore I, Joseph L. Cobb, Mayor of the City of Roanoke, encourage all residents to join me in recognizing and honoring the critical contributions made by our public works professionals who keep Roanoke safe, connected, clean, and thriving, and do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through 24, 2025, throughout this great 8-time All-America city as National Public Works Week.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I truly appreciate the recognition that you're giving these dedicated professionals. Public Works truly is a call to service, and the team that I have here in council chambers today really represents what Roanoke is, bringing levels of service to all where they may be that sometimes goes unnoticed. And so this proclamation, the recognition here today, is very much appreciated by the team. And with that, I'd like to invite a few of our team members. We have nearly 300 across the Department of Public Works, General Services, and our Parks and Recreation Department that provide these functions. So we have a small number of them here today that I'd like to bring up and just introduce who they are so that you can meet some of the team members that make Roanoke such a great place to live, work, and play.
Great, that's good.
Have everybody introduce their name and what they do.
I'm Mason Hankey. I'm the traffic engineer technician.
And if you all will come up here, we're going to take a picture.
I'm Markel Wright. I work in stormwater, and I'm a street sweeper operator.
I'm Wayne Embry, and I cut down trees.
Sally Lodebele. I work for environmental management.
Lori Eanes, I work for the engineering division as the administrative assistant.
Hi, I'm Ray Settle. I work at Parks and Rec under landscaping.
Hi, I'm Carly Malella. I'm a landscaper.
Hi, I'm Tim Clemmer. I work for urban forestry.
Hello, I'm Todd Quessenberry. I work in Parks, Recreation, Maintenance, Cleaning.
Hello, I'm Luke Jones. I'm a GIS specialist with asset management.
Hello, I'm Gwyneth Martin. I'm an environmental specialist for stormwater.
I'm Josephus Johnson Kuromer. I'm the project manager for the Wasina Bridge replacement. I'm one of the senior civil engineers in the engineering division. And just to bring to light, the city has 125 bridges and culverts. So one of my primary role is to make sure these bridges are inspected in accordance with federal and state regulations, and also according to city guidelines. And we also try to maintain the structure so that we maintain the structure so that we can have a safe, structures for the public to travel on. Thank you.
Hello, I don't know how to follow that, but I'm the structural supervisor. My name is David Stump for facilities.
Scott Worley, working facilities, we paint.
Ethan Lee, and I'm a painter.
Christopher Graham, painter.
Brittany Eads, painter for facilities.
Shine Sallier, project coordinator for facilities management. I'm Leanne Weizenfeld. I'm the sustainability coordinator in general services.
All right, and we also have Mr. Jeffrey Powell, the Director of General Services. Again, many of these folks work for his team, and Ms. Cindy McFall, who is the Director of Parks and Recreation, and many of these folks work for her as well.
Thank you. Before we take a photo, I'll ask if any council members would like to share a few remarks. Ms. Powers?
Sure, thank you. So what I want people to know about all these people up here and all of my time that I spent at the city, they're so talented. I mean, when we had the treasurer's office redone, remodeled, they can do anything. They can build anything. And I was just so impressed with all the help that they do. But we are so lucky to have these individuals on our team. Thank each and every single one of you for what you do every day.
Mr. Allison?
I just want to point out, one of the things that really struck out to me was how many different jobs and departments people are in. It really shows how much work y'all do and how important you are to the city getting the services that it needs and our citizens having a good livability. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Others? Vice Mayor?
I'll just say thank you as well. And I think, Mr. Campbell, I totally agree. You said that so many of these things that this group works on go unseen. And I was just in my shout outs talking about my weekend down in Wasena, and it's all of the people, I think, in front of us and more that help keep our facilities and our parks and just keep us running our city, an amazing, beautiful place to live. So I know that we can always find things that we need to do better and things that we would like to do more of, but I just feel really fortunate I think we have an amazing, beautiful city, and no doubt all of you add to that, so thank you.
I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do and for keeping our city shining. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Carol, if you want to direct us.
Yes, because we are going to have to smush. Those of us in the middle here, if you all could come forward a bit. Okay? And those of you on the side, if you could fill in behind. Yep. We're going to need to come in just a little bit more. Yeah. Nope, I am good. 1, 2, maybe. Now that I've got you all in position. There we go. All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
The second proclamation that we have today is to honor and recognize ALS Month, and I want to express my gratitude to one of our citizens, Mark Carey, for always bringing this to our attention. And this goes out to all of our citizens who are living with ALS. Whereas amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease, is a progressive fatal neurodegenerative disease in which a person's brain loses connection with their muscles, slowly reducing a person's ability to walk, talk, eat, and eventually breathe. Whereas thousands of new amyotrophic lateral sclerosis ALS cases are reported every year, and estimates show that every 90 minutes someone is diagnosed with ALS and someone passes away from ALS. Whereas on average, patients diagnosed with ALS survive only 2 to 5 years from the time of diagnosis, the exact causes of ALS are unknown, and there is no cure for ALS. Whereas people who have served in the military are more likely to develop ALS and die from the disease than those with no history of military service, securing access to new therapies, durable medical equipment, and communication technologies is of vital importance to people living with ALS. Whereas clinical trials play a pivotal role in evaluating new treatments, enhancing quality of life, and fostering assistive technologies for those living with ALS. Whereas the ALS Association is committed to accelerating the pace of discovery, fueled by the hope that one day ALS will be a livable disease for everyone, everywhere, until a cure can be found. And whereas Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis Awareness Month provides an opportunity to increase public awareness of the dire circumstances of people living with ALS, acknowledge the terrible impact this disease has on those individuals and their families, and support research to eradicate this disease. Now therefore I, Joseph L. Cobb, Mayor of the City of Roanoke, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 throughout this great 8-time All-America city as ALS Awareness Month. Now at this time, I'd like to call on our city manager, Ms. Turner, to introduce Chief David Hoback for a recognition of the Department of Fire and EMS.
Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, and council members, as you know, our fire department, specifically our EMS, what they do on a day-to-day basis is why we come to work every single day. They care for our residents, and this particular, I don't want to call it an incident. I'm so glad to see you. It just goes to show what they do for us as residents, and I am so excited to be able to introduce our chief, who kind of orchestrates all of this, but more importantly, his team. So join me in welcoming Chief Hoback and his team.
Thank you, Ms. Turner, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor. It really is truly an honor, and I'm going to hold my remarks because I think Mr. Richmond Vincent beside me, I think he's got some remarks to make. And then after that, I want to introduce the team that made his presence here possible. Okay? And this is really good that we're doing it today because this is National EMS Recognition Month, week. And what we do is often transparent to our community. But I will tell you that Mr. Vincent's here because of the outstanding support we've gotten from City Council and City Management to do what we do every day. Mr. Vincent?
Thank you, Chief Hoback, and Mayor and City Council. I stand here before you today to recognize the heroic work of the first responders of Roanoke, Virginia. And so just to give you a sense of me standing here today, I'm a former athlete, football, both collegiate and on the professional ranks, and I had a heart attack on December 14th. If you asked me before that day, how are you going to pass? What's going to be that thing that takes your life? I would have never guessed it was my heart, because I worked out like a fiend. Myself, I dragged my wife with me. I never thought that that would happen to me. But on December 14th, I went into VFib. And if it wasn't for my wife, Sandra, who is here with us today, Sandra? Oh, she ran in the back there. Who gave me CPR. But more importantly, it was how quick the folks from Station 14 responded and aided me. And another chief would talk about, I was down for 27 minutes. 27 minutes. And they said, Richard, we shocked you 6 times. And so, I stand before you, I'm on borrowed time right now. But I wanted to just, before I turn it back over, I wanted to read a note. So after, I was in the hospital a couple weeks, I got out. I got an email from Lieutenant Thomas Bettner. And this email reads, some of my incredible colleagues who work with me daily responded to your home when you tried to leave this earth in December. I'm so glad to hear you were unsuccessful. I hope you are recovering well and back home. These moments are so incredibly rare, and our folks never receive much follow-up from the critical calls that they receive. I would love to reunite your family and the crew from Station 14 for a brief greeting if you are so inclined. And we did do that. You can see the picture here. We cherish these very rare moments to celebrate a life saved. We run a tremendous number of calls, including cardiac arrest, and so very few ever end positively. It always leaves a career-spanning impression on our responders, both young and tenured, when they get to see how their efforts truly result in preserving life. And, I'll tell you, when I first, my wife would tell you, guys, I wasn't serious about any of this because I wasn't awake. So I was unconscious the whole time. So to me, I woke up and the hospital was ready to go. But reading this note, and then 2 months ago when my cardiologist looked at me and said, Richmond, dude, you died. She said, you died. And those paramedics brought you back to life. And for me, what better way can I say thank you but to bring them before this council and recognize their heroic achievement and allowing me to be right in front of you today. So, Chief Holbeck, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Vinton, I'll echo that. I'll also say I'm proud that you're one of my neighbors because I see him out walking, he and his wife exercising and staying fit. I will tell you that is a really good reason why he's here today, that he is a strong, absolutely sound and fit individual. Like you said, we had a cardiac arrest early in the morning, and the call was acknowledged as a critical incident for us to respond to as an EMS, and that receives the highest level of response, advanced care paramedic, a medic unit, and then an engine company that goes for support. But also on this call, we also had a police officer in the area that heard the call and responded into action as well. So I want to recognize the team that actually came to Mr. Vincent's aid. And I will tell you, while we have cardiac arrests that we are successful in resuscitating, they often are not able to stand before you. In this case, completely healed, completely normal, back to work, and absolutely a phenomenal. It does my heart good to see him here today. But the first person I want to recognize is Officer Ariana. Ariana, come on up. Now, often you don't see police officers jump into action as it relates to EMS calls, but this gentleman did. Phenomenal. Went in, engaged the wife, and indicated what was going on, immediately recognized he was in cardiac arrest and started CPR. Shortly after that, our team from Station 14 responded, which is Engine 14 and Medic 14. And I do want to emphasize, over a year ago, last FY24, this council authorized us to put an ambulance down at Fire Station 14. It is one of the areas of the city that we had the longest response times for ambulance service. And we have a growing EMS demand down there along with a growing population. So we went from a 9-minute ambulance response time to 4 minutes because of that placement of that ambulance. But the team from Station 14 is here, and I do want to recognize them if they have all come forward. First one is from Captain Adam Trout, Lieutenant George Harris, And Jack Novanovich is not here today. He's out on personal leave. He was also there. Timothy Kinney. Paramedic Josh Montgomery. Firefighter EMT Greg Duncan. And then the author of the letter, Thomas Bachner, Lieutenant. He's one of our advanced care paramedics, if he would come up as well. This is the team that we deploy when we have critical medical situations, whether it's a cardiac arrest or delivering a baby or whatever it may be, so that we can get the resources on the scene quick, get the care, reverse the problem that's going on, such as in Mr. Vincent's case, restored his heart back to normal rhythm, got him breathing again, gave him the medications that he needs. By the time he gets to the hospital, they just kind of look at, well, you've done all our job for us, which is good. But in this case, it really is amazing about what they do day in and day out. So this team did an outstanding job in partnership with the police department. That's what the chain of survival is all about, getting to those patients quick, starting CPR, getting them to ALS or advanced life support intervention quick, and then getting them off to the hospital. So thank y'all for what you do every day. We did recognize him down at Station 14, and his wife gave us a little trinket that we still have and I still have, so thank you very much for that. So, Mayor?
So, Council, any reflections you'd like to share back?
I just want to thank you guys for everything that you do. You know, we don't think about it until we have to use you, and thank goodness, but we appreciate everything that you do. You're truly wonderful people. Thank you.
You know, I'll add, when my grandmother was alive, we had to call EMS quite often for her because of her health and, so many chronic diseases that she had. And in that moment, as a family, as a loved one, you don't know what to do. It's the worst few moments of your life every time you have to call them because you don't know what is going to happen. And every time we would call, I guess the closest station would be the one on Melrose right there by CVS to my house. And every time we would have to call, by the time the fire trucks and the EMTs would show up and walk in, you all always gave us a sense of security. And because we had to call so often sometimes, when you all would show up, me and my mother would be put to rest because we knew that we had some well-equipped men and women showing up to do what they could do to always keep my grandmother alive and healthy, and that they did. So I thank you all personally for everything you all always did for my family and so many other families across our great city.
One of the things that I feel here is pride. We have such a good fire and EMS service, and to see something like this, to see Mr. Vincent up here walking after what happened to him, that just makes me so proud of what you guys do every day and how you do it and how you represent our city. So thank you very much for what you guys did.
I just want to say thank you sincerely, and I hope that we can continue to give you the support that you need to keep us all safe. So thank you.
And I will always let you know that I am very proud of what you do in our city. So thank you again. Mr. Arellano, thank you as well.
Yeah, no words can express how thankful all of us are. So thank you all again.
And the one thing I just want to kind of highlight is the email that was sent to Mr. Vincent. It is really truly about the people that we have working for us, and the fact that they care about what we do every day. And when we have situations like this, and even ones that are bad, caring for the family members that are left behind is what's important to them. But to see Mr. Vincent here today really uplifted their heart, and know that they are not doing their job in vain, and everything they do impacts lives. And so I'm very proud of what they do, and I'm very honored to be chief of the Roanoke Fire-EMS department. So thank y'all.
I've got you. That's looking. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you all so much for your attention to these celebrations and these important recognitions in our city. We now move on to item 3, which is the hearing of citizens upon public matters. This is a time that City Council sets aside for citizens to be heard. All matters will be referred to the city manager for response, recommendation, or report to the council as she may deem appropriate. Madam Clerk, do we have citizens signed up to speak today?
Yes, we have 4 citizens.
Okay.
Our first 2, Bernadette Lark and Susan Evans Brown.
I don't see Ms. Lark. Ms. Brown? Yeah, come on up. Welcome. You have 5 minutes,
Okay.
if you need that.
Good afternoon, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Susan Evans Brown, and I was born and raised in Roanoke, Virginia. As a child, I lived in Lincoln Terrace, and I'd like to share today about the Caretaker's Cottage, who used to be called the Evans Cottage back then. I was born right here at Burma Memorial Hospital, and I lived in Lincoln Terrace, so I spent many hours and days in the park. I'm also a member of Friends of Washington Park, and I just want to share a few things about the cottage. I feel like the cottage has always been an important in the community, even through my childhood, and I do remember the caretakers and how they took care of the cottage and the grounds and how they made sure that communities and families in the community that presented events there were well taken care of and that we were safe. I do know as an African American in this community, we have already lost a lot of our cultural and ancestral landmarks and our memories. And the Friends of Washington Park would like to restore and maintain the last building of its kind in the Gainsborough and Washington Park community. The Evans Cottage was here long before Roanoke City was ever thought of. And to me, that makes it historical. And its foundation itself, I believe, is historical because of the decades that it has remained there and is still standing. The Caretaker's Cottage is a landmark that I believe provides history for the next generations to follow. I feel that it's a monument, that it represents the Black community and its occupants. We want to be able to share our history and our culture with our children to nourish and support their spirits and their minds and give them the knowledge of their history. The cottage provides a foundation, and we believe that it's a blessing to the community. I believe personally that every time a citizen in our community dies, that is elder, then we lose some of our knowledge. We lose our history. That's one of the reasons the Friends of Washington Park work hard. We've had press conferences. We've marched. We do everything we can to get the community involved because we believe that that building alone is a foundation to the whole community, and that there could be so much more history that could be shared with the next generation to come. And instead of us destroying another building that has all kinds of history from ancestors decades before, that we should preserve it so that for the next generation, they will not lose knowledge of their heritage every time an elder dies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown.
Our next 2 speakers, Laura Hartman and Frida Cathcart.
Welcome, Dr. Hartman.
Good afternoon. I bring you greetings from the Bus Riders of Roanoke Advocacy Group. We mostly have positive things to tell you about today. The first is our favorite bus stop contest. Voting is available for one more day. It's been going on for a few weeks now. Voting is available until May 20th on our website, which is brag.org, brrag.org. Please go vote for your favorite bus stop. I'm here to tell you that in the lead, out of the top 3, 2 of them are in Southeast on Jameson. Those new bus stops that have these nice pollinator themes, they're beautiful. But guess what? Number 2 is a venerated favorite from Hurt Park. We also have highly ranked that iconic mid-century modern bus stop at Melrose Towers. And there are others so we encourage you to go and vote for your favorite bus stop before the deadline tomorrow. So that's my invitation. I also wanted to give you an introduction. Now, before I name these people, I want to tell you about them. I think that we all can recognize that it takes a very special person to drive a bus. You not only have to be a good driver, you have to be good at driving a 35 to 40 foot vehicle. You not only have to be timely to show up to work on time, which is hard enough because work starts well before the sun gets up in the morning, but you also have to be able to keep a schedule as you are driving around. Not only do you have to be a friendly person who is dealing with the public every day, but you have to be friendly and cordial and professional even when people are not so nice to you, which unfortunately does happen sometimes in a bus situation. The people who I want to introduce to you have excelled at this job of driving a bus, gone way above and beyond. Now, in Bragg, we hear some cranky bus riders, frankly. They have some complaints, but whenever either of these people is mentioned, the faces turn to gentle smiles. And everyone says, oh, I love them. They're the good ones, right? And they are. These two people I'm about to introduce you are the good ones. So not only are they amazing at this job, but they have done it for a long time. If you add up the number of years that these two individuals have driven these buses, you get the number 91. That's a really long time, is it not? Now, one of these individuals has served Valley Metro as a driver for 50 years. You know, Valley Metro is about to celebrate being in existence for 50 years, so he was there from the beginning. This man retired in 2023, and we are still waiting for Valley Metro to put his name on a plaque. There's a plaque. It's empty. Doesn't have anybody on it. 2 years. We're still waiting. But anyway, we trust that he will be honored, and we hope that they both will be honored very soon for their amazing service. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to our heroes, the Saunders, Mr. Charles Saunders and Mrs. Arnetta Saunders, 50 years and 41 years respectively. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Hartman and Charles and Arnetta. Welcome, Ms. Cathcart.
Good morning, or good afternoon. I'm waiting for the clock to be reset. There you go. It was down to 40 seconds. I was like, I think I have a little bit more time than that. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity during the public forum to address the council. I bring before your attention an important subject that's affected our city for a long time, and that is the struggle with racism and the impact upon our city and the citizens and how we respond to it. And I want to remind the city that coming up, I believe it's May 30th, will be the 5th anniversary of when the police fired on pepper balls at peaceful protesters in downtown Roanoke. I'm here as the president of the GFWC Star Women's Club, of which BJ Lark is one of our members. And she was one of the leaders that day that went to the protest at the Washington Park for George Floyd. And it was mostly civic leaders, primarily black teachers, preachers, and kids that came out that day. And I went there to support the protest, as well as, some people don't know this about me, but I'm a photojournalist as well. So I went there to cover it too. And after the speakers happened at the park, they decided they wanted to march somewhere. And everybody was being so responsible. This was at the very beginning of the pandemic. And people were wearing masks because we didn't know what was happening then. Even though we were outside, we didn't have the science at that time to know we were safe being near each other with masks on. And everybody was being, walking along the sidewalks, not impeding traffic, not blocking the sidewalks, obeying the law until they got down on Campbell Avenue within a block or a half a block of the city jail. And there was a blockade there that blocked everybody up. They weren't able to do their social distancing. There was confusion at the time. The leaders at the time, which is Jordan Bell and BJ Lark, the people were following, were waiting. They were talking. BJ Lark went up and talked to an officer there and said, we're just trying to get by on the sidewalks. We're going back to the park. They had water and everything back in the park. It's why are you blocking us? You're making us bunch up. And then before we knew it, I was way in the back, but this was based on testimony and video that I saw later. By the time I got there, the police had already been firing pepper balls, and there's pepper spray that was there. And half a block away, when I was near the city where we are now, the building, I could feel the sting of the pepper spray. And I had to take off my mask and stuff that was on. And everybody was taking off their mask and sputtering. It was a public safety health crisis that was being created, besides the harm that was done by these air turrets on the peaceful protesters. And then eventually that got cleared up. And then at night there was another protest that I got out. It was after 11 o'clock at night. I was watching the 11 o'clock news, and I'm also a certified legal observer, and I saw where there was a standoff downtown between the police and protesters. And I got up and I put my legal observer hat on and went down and covered what I witnessed that day, of which I can't speak of publicly because that was evidence for a lawyer. But I did meet afterwards with the mayor and the representative from the legal department, the police, and presented the evidence of that day, which was alarming. And that's all I'll say about that. What I've been waiting for, and the other members of our club and the other citizens of the city has been a reckoning, an acknowledgement of what happened that day. We can't go back, we can't change the past, but it does matter that there is an acknowledgement with history that something happened that wasn't the best moment for our city. But in order for us to have better moments, we need to do the work of acknowledgement, what happened and how can we work together better to make sure it doesn't happen again. So that's what I bring before you today, is an opportunity to work with the city and the citizens to address the situation that hasn't been acknowledged yet and to do the work so that more recent things like what happened to BJ Lark's son and other citizens that happened in Roanoke City, where it seems like the interactions with the police aren't the same as with people that look like me, that's improved upon. Because I know we can do better, because we're good people who live here, and we have to do better. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Caspar. Does that conclude all of our speakers this afternoon? Thank you. We'll move on now to our consent agenda. and all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by members of the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of the items, but if discussion is desired, an item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. So I'll entertain a motion and a second on approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan and Mr. Volleson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. We have no public hearings under our regular agenda, but we do have a communication that we're walking on today. It's a presentation by the Christiansburg Institute in relation to the grant that they're submitting, BIPOC grant in support of the Washington Park Caretaker's Cottage. And I believe all council has a copy of the presentation at the dais, but I'm glad to introduce Mr. Chris Sanchez and Ms. Brittany Flowers. Welcome. And you all have 10 minutes, so we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, City Manager Ms. Turner, and to the rest of City Council. I have with me Brittany Flowers, who is a public historian and researcher that lives here locally in Roanoke, and then Kathy Carter, who is the Friends of the Washington Park. We do have a presentation this afternoon that will provide an update on a grant application that we are currently pursuing in partnership with the Friends of Washington Park and the city itself. This is our presentation here. Before we begin, however, I do want to kind of highlight who we are briefly as a nonprofit. As a 501c3 nonprofit located in Montgomery County, Virginia, where we operate a museum and a learning center that honors the first black high school in the region of Southwest Virginia to educate formerly enslaved people, working together with the Friends of Washington Park, who advocates for the preservation and public telling of the park itself. Here's a presentation outline that kind of highlights each slide that we'll be working through during our 10-minute presentation, which covers the historical overview of the site, the park, and the property itself, which Brittany will elaborate on in a moment, the financing that we believe will make this project possible and successful, sort of the model we've adopted in advancing this project to completion, the difference between soft versus hard costs, just some public education about these kinds of preservation projects, the phased approach that we've adopted to implement funding that is awarded for the completion of the site, the core values that guide the work we do on a grassroots, community-based level. We will briefly explore adaptive reuse options and kind of where CI plays a role in working together with the city and Friends of Washington Park and the general public, and then the actual market size that we believe will be impacted by a successful completion of the site. With that being said, I'm going to step back and Brittany Flowers will come to the podium and share about the history of the site. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As we continue this preservation effort, I want to center the conversation on the true layered history of what's often misnamed as the Evans House. The structure was built in 1837, likely by enslaved labor, and today stands as one of Roanoke City's last remaining antebellum buildings. But this is more than just a surviving structure. It sits on land with deep indigenous roots to Tutelo and Monacan territory that was forcibly taken before becoming a site tied to enslavement, Black family life, and the civil rights resistance. There is no historical evidence that the Evans family ever lived in this house. Every documented owner, however, of this land was, though, before emancipation and enslaver. Just as important is what happened after emancipation. The quiet stewardship of 3 Black caretakers and their wives who lived on this site during segregation reflects Black Roanoke's enduring legacy of care, service, and resilience. And of course, we must lift up the leadership of Reverend R.R. Wilkinson, who not only advocated for this park's integrity, but also fought against decisions like the placement of a dump here that devalued the city's only black park at the time. This layered history is what makes the site so important, and it's why we must approach preservation with truth and care. We now have clear documented proof that at least 8 individuals were sold from this site in the 1840s by Jeremiah Vinton, who then resided here, according to the documents. These were not just names in a ledger. Their names are Barnett, Peter, Willis, George, Harrison, Millie, Eliza, and Rhodey. These were people. Their lives were uprooted for profit. This page from the deed book, which is in this little caption here, is from Deed Book C, is just one example. In it, we see Vinton selling off the property piece by piece, and with it, the people who were enslaved on this land. Their names are central to this work, and the ethical obligation we carry in preservation is not just to save a building, but to bring these individuals back into public memory with dignity and truth. And finally, this story does not end with a single deed. There's a long history of documentation of this property. In 1864, a woman named Mary J. Lawson, who was enslaved by Clark Campbell. And if you look at the map here, you can see the highlighted yellow is what is Washington Park. And we can see that Edward Watts owns the property, part of it, and Clark Campbell owns another portion of this. And in the birth records in 1864, a woman named Mary J. Lawson, enslaved by Clark Campbell, gave birth to twins on this land. Namesakes, the children were named for her and her husband, Lewis Fleming, who was enslaved nearby by the Watts family. Baby Lewis did not survive the birth. Their other known surviving children, including baby Mary, are now honored by name on the Roanoke College's Authors and Architects Memorial. This 1862 map shows the Campbells and Watts properties overlapping with what is now Washington Park, visibly reinforcing how interwoven this land is with stories of both trauma and survival. And this is why we say the work is unfinished. The records are there, the families are traceable, and the story is knowable, but only if we continue this work together.
Thank you, Brittany. And this complex, layered history is what makes the site an ideal candidate for the grant application that we are currently drafting, which is the Black Indigenous People of Color Grant administered by the National Trust of Historic Preservation. This slide here is going to detail how we see the financing of the project being successful. So we see kind of a multi-stream approach, which will include preservation grants, historic tax credits, as well as grassroots giving campaigns and individual contributions from local folks here and actually abroad who really believe in the power of this story and the power of the land itself. Again, we are very much highlighting non-city funding to restore and rehabilitate this property, and we are adamantly seeking grant funding as a core part of what we see completing the project successfully. This slide here highlights CI's record of success in approaching grantors to fund the preservation of African American history. I do want to highlight that while we are located in Montgomery County, our service footprint extends to Southwest Virginia, as many students for 100 years traveled to Montgomery County to attend the historic Christiansburg Industrial Institute. These grant awards allow us to preserve the material history of Black life in the region, again dating back to 1866 all the way up into the present moment. This slide here kind of highlights where we are in the grant application process. We first submitted a letter of intent about 2 months ago to be reviewed by the grantor. Upon successful review, we were invited to submit a full application on April 8th. And the actual grant itself, the full entire proposal is due May 23rd by close of business day, 5 p.m. We are continuing to finalize a very strong grant proposal for this competitive funding. Something we do want to highlight too is the community-based model that we're taking, which is to work with the property owner, the city of Roanoke, CI as the project coordinator, and then of course Friends of Washington Park as the community stakeholder who will really continue to engage local communities about the history of the site and the importance of preserving that site. I'll end on this slide by just saying this is very strongly in alignment with the grantor's grant manual of what they're prioritizing in terms of the scoring and criteria of grant applications. They really do want to see robust community involvement, and we really believe this tri-partnership signals that in a powerful way. We are taking a phased approach. If we had all the funding in the world to do it right now, we would absolutely do that. With that being said, from a preservation perspective, we are focusing on the exterior of the site. That is the brick masonry, the roof system itself, the flooring, and the 2 exterior doors are some of the primary capital improvements that we're focusing on in a phasic approach to the project. The difference between hard and soft costs are any architectural assessments, reporting that goes into informing hard cost physical construction of the property. This is just a really key point for the actual preservation of the site itself. The difference between hard and soft costs, both combined, make a project successful. I'll move quickly through this slide. This is just a timeline of how we imagine this property being restored, and again, our phasic approach itself. We'll begin with the roof, moving towards windows, masonry, and flooring, and that itself would make the building weather envelope tight. I'll wrap up in just a moment here. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're fine.
That itself would make the building envelope tight, which from a preservation perspective is extraordinarily key as we take our phasic approach, making sure weather elements, any pests are not actually getting into the property would be the first priority on a capital campaign with funding. Core values, community-centered approach, making sure directly impacted voices, most notably those who grew up in the park, have memories of the park with family directly connected to the site, are deeply important to the preservation of the project and working with stakeholders to determine its adaptive reuse. CI, again, we really just want to work with the city, Friends of Washington Park, and the local community to determine what the adaptive reuse will be of the property. And that can be done in a multiplicity of powerful ways, but we are not here to say, what will happen inside the building. We just want to work with the stakeholders to ensure that the public and the city itself are meaningfully, obviously involved in determining that shared use that is a public benefit for the citizens of Roanoke. This slide here, highlights the market size. What we're really focusing on are the many students that would be impacted by learning about Roanoke's shared history as it relates to the site, the park itself, and the caretaker's cottage. Approximately 17,000 students in all of Roanoke, but the actual target area itself represents about 4,000. So if we imagine field trips, workshops, cultural programming, really highlighting the shared history for students to engage in the legacy of Roanoke. And with that, I will step back, and thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Carter. Can I just briefly tell you about some of the next steps that we're planning?
Sure.
One of the things that we're doing is that we have a lecture on the history that's going to be June 26th at the Gainsborough Library at 6 p.m. So we have that going out. And then I'm going to leave this with the clerk. And then the other thing is that I think someone from Parks is supposed to be contacting us about working with us on the charrette. And once the planning committee for that we have that's going to help us with the anniversary of the park, Washington Park would be 102 years old. That was actually celebrated on July 4th, 1923. But the city purchased the property in October 1922. So every year from that point, people came from all over statewide to celebrate the 4th of July. And so that's why we're going to do this on the 5th of July. It's going to be a celebration at Washington Park to honor the history and the legacy of the park. But during that time, we have members that are from Lincoln Terrace. One of them is on our Friends of Washington Park Committee, and some are on the Planning Committee. But that day is going to be a fabulous day, and people are just fired up about it. And we're so excited to be able to celebrate this park for 102 years. Thank you. Appreciate your help. I love this new council. You are very supportive. It's been 3 years come June that we've been in this struggle to just get to where we are today. And it's not been easy. And I can tell you, I have never been a person that enjoyed history. In 1976, before I graduated from high school, our history book only mentioned 2 black people in it. So I never enjoyed history. But this has been a task and an assignment that now I love history. This has been amazing. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Appreciate it. So, any follow-up questions for clarification from council for either of the presenters?
I'd just like to thank you for the work that you've put in, and thank you for this presentation that gives us a lot of information, and we just appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Hagan?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, why is it been called the Evans House? Do we have any indication as to why that occurred?
I suspect it's because the Evanses were one of the first pioneers to the area. So Mark Evans at one point did own the property, and so it's linking it to this older history. But the home itself was not built until 1837, and it was by Jeremiah Whitten.
Okay.
So and all evidence shows that though they owned the property, I could go back. I'll go back quick, I'm sorry. I just wanted to show you the map. That was it right there. So though they owned the property, they lived up more like where Edward Watts's name is.
Okay.
So they owned that portion, but they weren't living there. Their homestead was above it, and I think it was called Oakland. I believe, I could be wrong on that, but they weren't living there personally. The property seems to be sold over and over again like a business. It's sold sometimes within a year. Someone buys it, and then within a year they sell it, and it's constantly overturned. It's making some sort of an agricultural profit to the buyers and sellers of that property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Vice Mayor?
I just want to say thank you very much for the presentation. I think the property has such an amazing, rich history, and I think there's just so much there that for so long has really been hidden in plain sight. You know, most of us drive by and see this building wrapped in plastic that is blight, you know, in our public park, and we want better. I think everyone would like to see something better. We may disagree on exactly what that looks like, but I think you've really presented a lot of useful information, and I really appreciate the time you've put in to the research and all of the work that Kathy, you've done with Friends of Washington Park, and I appreciate Christiansburg Institute getting involved, and I also appreciate Ms. Turner, your support with the letter on the application for the grant and all of the time that your staff have put into this as well. So I just want to say thank you very much, and I'm really excited to support this moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Volleson?
One question I had is, I know that you're applying for this BIPOC grant. I have a question as to how much are you guys applying for?
So the ceiling, the most you can apply for the grant is 1 million. We are going for 800,000. There's still a lot of moving parts there. We initially thought that we would be focusing on with this particular grant pool, we thought we would focus primarily on the exterior, but after recent discussions with a contractor, we believe, please do not quote me, it's a projection, but we believe that 800,000 could restore the interior and exterior. So we are going for the $800,000 level for the actual grant application.
So your estimate for the project cost for doing all of this preservation is $800,000?
So that would be, yes, sir, that would be the exterior and the interior for a white box envelope, weather-tight structure.
And is that the full restoration, like with the stuff that's already there on site?
So what would not be included would be things like HVAC. as well as any wayfinding signage and hardscaping, landscaping for a parking lot to make the site actually accessible. That $800,000 figure focuses on the exterior and the interior.
And about how many square feet is the house?
925, we can confirm that. I trust what Kathy is saying, but 925 square feet. And it's a two-story structure as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's a small facility.
Any other questions, Mr. Nash?
Well, I was going to say no questions, but I thank you all for the work you've put in, especially Friends of Washington Park. I know sometimes it seemed like a uphill climb, and so I'm just happy that, we can do what we can to support you all in your efforts, and I'm optimistic about the future of the cottage and Washington Park as a whole, and our city as a whole, beyond that as the future comes.
Thank you. And, just if I might add, in addition to Mr. Nash and Vice Mayor McGuire and Mayor Cobb, Ms. Turner, also Strategic Coordinator Helen Ferguson in your office has been extraordinarily collaborative and responsive and working in partnership. So thank you to Ms. Ferguson as well.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Ms. Carter, what are the plans that you have for the house after it's renovated? What do you plan to have there?
We've done surveys, we've had community engagements meetings, we've done a lot of things with the public and the community, and the surveys indicated like certain things that people wanted it to become, and we definitely know that there's going to be programming, educational type of things and activities within the house that works in correlation with parks and recreation. Because one of the things that's lacking, there's no recreation center, there's no activities, there's no programming in that whole community, and we need to bring that back. And so once we complete the charrette based on what's already been provided that the community said they wanted, then we would be able to identify the main source of activities and programming there.
Because 3 years ago, I was trying to advocate there for a community center, and I was told that it's too small for a community center. That it's not, it was not going to be a good use of the building because you couldn't fit a community center in there. So that's all I want to know.
Well, you can fit classes in there. The room is split in two, so you got a 12 by 18 and a 13 by 17 on both sides. And it's a antebellum, so it's a split, it's a wall that splits in between the two rooms. And then you have your old hole upstairs, which is 425 square feet. So I think you can put a class in each of the sections.
And who do you say was going to do the classes in there again? I'm sorry.
We hadn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're going to be working in correlation with parks, with programming, based on what the community has already identified that they wanted from the surveys and the community engagements we've already completed.
And are Friends of Evans Springs, not Evans Springs, Evans Cottage going to be responsible for the upkeep of that building? How's that?
That's something to be determined. We're saving and preserving the building for the city. This is your building, so we will be able to work with you all. So once it's rehab, that's something we could bring to the table.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just add, I think that's really important, that collaborative piece for the upkeep and maintenance of the site is something that can be determined in partnership, working together with the city of Roanoke, as well as Friends of Washington Park.
Mr. Ellison?
I'd like to follow up on Mrs. Sanchez-Jones' comments. This project started 3 years ago. I remember when it started. I remember our first briefing on it in council was my first year here on council. And I remember that we specifically asked for a plan of what is going to happen with this facility after it is possibly renovated. That has been something that we have been asking for 3 years now. And you just answered Ms. Sanchez-Jones saying that you have a survey and that's all that you have at this point. You don't know who's going to maintain the building afterwards. You don't know what programs are going to be in there. So I want this to be transparent to the public that this is not the first time we asked for this. We have asked for this before, and it has to be, to me, I think there needs to be a decision on what is going to happen to this property afterwards. 927 square feet is not a big place. We have been told it cannot fit a community center. There has to be something that makes this viable, otherwise we're going to continue to put money into something that we're not going to be able to use other than for it to restore the building.
I think I understand as a property owner, it makes perfect sense why you would want to see and know comprehensively how the property will be reused as well as maintained. Part of what we want to build into the BIPOC grant is a pro forma on what will make the building revenue generating in hopefully year 3. And these kinds of soft costs do cost money, right? I know the Friends Group has worked very hard to fundraise. I think to the level that we really want to be able to execute, that pro forma development will be key for the grant that we're currently applying to. And I think that successfully being awarded those fundings, we would be able to demonstrate comprehensively to the cent on how the building would be maintained, and then also revenue generating in hopefully year 3 of 5 in a pro forma statement.
So you're asking the city to commit to renovating, which would at the very least be $800,000, and then commit to operating this building and without any plan until you get the money to create a plan.
And this is how these preservation projects do go. I think right now what we're asking for is a continued conversation and a collaboration. I know it's been a long time. I think as we move forward, letters of support for grants is primarily what we do need. And then once those grant funds are awarded, working together in partnership to determine the adaptive reuse. To date, I'm not aware of a master site plan with the park that aligns with potential use of the actual property of the caretaker's cottage. I think, again, working together to determine that is going to be very key. So for right now, what we're asking for are letters of support for grant funding that we do pursue and a continued conversation in completing the project together.
And what would be so if the grant isn't for $800,000 or it's for less and there's not an ability to, so what does that look like if the grant comes in less than what we would like it to be?
Well, we would need to revise the project budget to accommodate awarded funding at whatever level that would be, and continue to apply for preservation grants to restore the site.
And how much money has been raised to this point?
The money we've raised is for specifically the cottage to help pay for the work that we're doing, to pay for the engineer, and to do what other things that needs to be done.
And so how much money have you raised to?
And we identified that a couple months ago, so we've raised over 17,000.
And just so we are...
Excuse me, I have the floor.
Okay, hold on. Just take a breath. And I want to remind you all that we're grateful that you're here. This is an opportunity for us to get clarification. I do also want to say that you stated very early on, Mr. Sanchez, that you were not asking the city for any funding. So let's be clear on that, and that this is a phased project. So the first phase is really the exterior stability. The second phase would be interior stability, and the third phase would be any operational support going forward, as I understand it. So, Mr. Bollison, go ahead and finish, and then we'll move to Mr. Hagan.
I appreciate that, Mr. Hagan. Now I have forgotten what that question was.
All right, we'll go to Mr. Hagan and come back.
Actually, Mayor, you reiterated what I was about to ask, was that they are not currently asking for any sort of city money, that this is a grant through a external organization for about...
It's a federal grant.
Okay, thank you. That was what I was going to ask and highlight.
Excuse me, mistake then.
Mr.
Come
Cobb.
back to you?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. The other question that I had was that in the financing plan, I see that it's asking for historic tax credits. We, as we know from the Fishburne Perk project, if you will, that in order to get to historic tax credits, it has to be owned by an organization. So that means that the city would also have to sell this parkland to the organization for it to do this?
That's correct, and that's, again, these are a part of the conversations that we would like to continue to have with Roanoke City. None of this is set in stone. HTCs are a great financing option to offset some of those costs. I know there's been discussion in the past, I believe, about potential HTC pursual with a local developer. I don't think that's off the table. I think that's something we should continue to discuss and work towards collaboratively if we believe that is the option to go forward with.
I'm hearing a lot of uncertainty about this project, and we're here as a council to make sure that there is certainty with the project before we go forward and pull the trigger on spending close to $1 million, and I would say at least $1 million. So I appreciate your candidness with the questions,
Sure,
and
absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson.
I have a question.
Any other question?
I have
Ms.
one,
Powers?
just one. So as you apply for the grant, some of the questions that have been asked, are there questions on the grant as to how you will use the facility in the future?
So, yes, there are questions about the adaptive reuse, and we keep that very general, that it will be educational in nature and support the direct needs of the local community, and we're building into the grant that's not yet been determined. That does require some upfront capital to fund a charrette or to fund a master site plan of the property. Absent having, a large pool of funding, that is where that phasic approach becomes very important. So we're not writing any specific use in the grant application, but just that we will be working in collaboration with the local community and the city to determine that shared use.
So does that have a particular weight to it as to whether or not that grant gets funded based on what you can support the use of the building?
I think gesturing towards partnership with the property owner and the immediate local community makes the proposal very strong. I don't think that the grantor will be dissatisfied with not having a specific shared use, because preservation projects need to be determined collaboratively of that shared use, and I don't think that's happened yet. And I think going through a comprehensive process together to determine that shared use is not uncommon to these types of projects, and I don't see it as something that would not make the proposal stronger.
And what is the timeline from the time you turn it in to how long it takes for you to get notified that you will be awarded the grant or not awarded the grant?
So late summer 2025 is how it's listed on the actual grantor website, and it's a 2-year grant process. So if funds are awarded, it's a 2-year implementation to complete the scope of work that would be included in the project itself.
Thank you. And it's my understanding, Mr. Sanchez, that this is a grant that can be applied for
In cycles,
consecutively.
Yep. So this is one cycle. Next fiscal year, there will be another cycle. Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you.
There are other grants that we were told by Dr. Patton when she was here to run it through Helen, and those were the African American cultural grants that were perfect for this house because it involved the descendants, and the descendants of Jeremiah Whitten. She sent a support letter. She's involved. You have the caretaker himself that lived in the house with his sister and father. He's involved, and he has committed to donate each month a certain amount of money. And you have the descendants of the Calloway family, the first caretakers, who are involved in this process. And that grant comes around every February. And so we will always, look at that as being an option as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Carter.
And I do just want to point out that the community has already decided, like, the main things that they want the house to be. And then that also includes a meeting space. We've had businesses that actually want to take over that space. And we've had a community that wants to purchase it. And so we've had options. We're just trying to make sure that they're going to be the best options. And that's why we're going to rely on the charrette. We're going to hear more from the public and from the communities and from the organization as to how it's going to make it work for the entire community.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Last comment, Ms. Flowers, then we need to move on.
I do think there's just one, I normally am not in a position where I could say this freely, but I do think it's important to point out that any planning has to be involved with the city. There is no planning that can take place without city permission. The grants can't even be applied for without the city. So expecting a full proposal of everything that could happen, we don't know without working in collaboration with the city. And that's what we're trying to do now, is to work with the city because it is the city's property. No one can make decisions on that without the city's approval. So to make all those decisions before coming here is not possible. There has to be ongoing conversations, and that's what we're asking for.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time today and the presentation. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back for our 2 city manager briefings. Thank you all for coming back. We're continuing our afternoon session, and I'm going to invite our city manager, Ms. Turner, to introduce our two briefings.
Thank you, Mayor Cobb. I am pleased to bring before you today an important update on one of our city's most pressing and impactful initiatives, and that is the Envision Williamson Road project. As you know, Williamson Road is our city's highest crash corridor. I'm sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. My mic doesn't want to act right, sorry. As you know, Williamson Road is one of the highest crash corridors, and for far too many years, it has been a site of serious and sometimes fatal traffic incidences. This corridor is vital not only to our transportation network, but also to the strength and vibrancy of the surrounding neighborhood and businesses. For that reason, we have engaged deeply with our community over the past 2 years to develop a shared vision for a safer, more accessible, and more inclusive Williamson Road. In 2023, Roanoke, was honored to be selected by the U.S. Department of Transportation's Thriving Communities Program, which brought us invaluable technical assistance and expertise to support this work. Today's briefing, we will give you a closer look at the processes and the progress and how we're aligning our goals with federal best practices and community priorities. We are fortunate to have with us today Mr. Christopher Fornash, who served as our technical advisor through this program. Mr. Fornash is the cities and streets sector co-lead at Nelson Nygaard, a nationally respected transportation planning firm. He brings over 30 years of experience helping cities like ours making their streets safer, more sustainable, and more equitable. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Christopher Fornash, who will walk us through the Envision Williamson Road initiative and the exciting opportunities it presents for Roanoke.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, for the record, my name is Chris Fornash. I'm a senior transportation planner with Nelson Nygaard, as the manager introduced me. I also have to note that I formerly chaired the Planning Commission in Arlington, Virginia, and a lot of this feels very familiar. It's in fact even the same microphone model. As well as the wonderful civic give and take between citizens and their elected officials, which always heartens me that democracy at many levels is doing just fine. I am here speaking on behalf of the Williamson Road, the Envision Williamson Road project, which is led by several people who are here in the audience with support from my firm and others. That's Director of Public Works Campbell, who you've already heard from today, Dwayne Dardin, who's also here, and Valerie Brown from the Greater Williamson Road Business Association, and many civic participants from the surrounding neighborhoods, businesses, and others from Roanoke. Oops. So why are we talking about Williamson Road? The manager laid out the basics, but in essence, it's because there's a longstanding set of safety challenges related to transportation along Williamson Road. Some of the crash statistics are quite eye-opening, depending on which segment and which time frame you're talking about. Some nearly 300 crashes in the 5-year period ending in 2023 in the 2-mile core section of Williamson Road. You can easily do the math, but noting that that's in the top 1% of all high crash corridors in the Commonwealth of Virginia in terms of the number of crashes. Even more starkly, Williamson Road is has the most traffic fatalities over the same period in Roanoke. Almost 49 people, let's not round up when we're talking about people's lives. 49 people died in traffic over that 5-year period in the city of Roanoke, including 18 killed while walking. And Williamson Road had not the majority, but the largest number of any segment of street in the city. 9 of those fatalities were on Williamson between Orange and Airport. 6 of those 9 were people walking. That's a third of all the people killed walking over those 5 years in the city of Roanoke. And I do want to acknowledge our professional colleagues at Tool Design who are working with the city on the Vision Zero action plan who did some of this analysis. And it's not just fatalities, although those are, well, sadly, they're the easiest to measure. Certainly, crashes that involve fatalities are always reported. Crashes that involve damage or injuries are frequently reported, although not always. But this type of road, and I know you're familiar with Williamson and many other roads like this in the city and beyond the city limits, 4-lane undivided roads can be very dangerous for all types of travelers. Among the crash types on Williamson in this period, again, a slightly different reporting period, a 4-year period, but almost half were high-angle collisions. These are the most dangerous. These are everything from head-on to T-bone kinds of collisions between vehicles. Another quarter of them were rear-end collisions, which can also cause significant injury or death. Smaller numbers were the less dangerous off-road collisions. Someone ran off. Certainly, if you hit something substantial like a tree or a post, you can suffer significant injury or death. Sideswipe collisions are much less dangerous. Anecdotally, this is one real benefit of roundabouts, and I know you have roundabouts in the city, is that while they still do have collisions, they generally tend to be those low-angle sideswipe types. And why does a 4-lane undivided facility like Williamson Road have so many crashes? It's driver behavior, but it's also design, right? It's the design of a facility. This is a simple well, maybe it's not a simple diagram. This is a diagram just highlighting the conflict points between vehicles trying to make different, entirely legal movements. These are not a function of drivers behaving, under the influence or driving at high speeds necessarily. But, among the very common types are the classic, someone is stopped to let someone else out, someone goes around them because there's an open lane next to them and ends up hitting the car trying to turn left or right. So because of the number of conflict points in a street of a design like this, it's, I won't say inevitable that you have a large number of crashes, but it lends itself to a large number of crashes. Roanoke's recognized this, my guess is much further back than 2016, but the first sort of systemic effort to try to redesign or at least try to rethink how Williamson Road operates was in 2016 when the city, in partnership with the Greater Williamson Road Business Association, worked to create some momentum behind change. And then that effort, I think everyone who was involved would say it was frustrating. It did not include a large amount of engagement with the community. It was coming from a good place, but it did not lead to an outcome that worked for people and did not lead to change on Williamson. It got people very upset. You probably still see the no road diet signs along Williamson Road. There may in fact be a fresh batch from this year. In 2021 and 2022, really at the not insistence of VDOT, but VDOT recognizing, again, that this is in the highest level of crash corridors in the entire Commonwealth, VDOT provided some resources for a design alternative for Williamson Road. But that, again, led to a very costly proposal, not fundable, and not well supported by the community in general. That brings us to the Envision Williamson Road effort that began, as the manager noted, almost 2 years ago, with support from the U.S. Department of Transportation's Thriving Communities program. So this has not cost the city anything, although I do want to absolutely acknowledge city staff have been active participants in this. So you have contributed, certainly, and in fact, in a leadership role. But this effort really starts with the community. It doesn't start with the design. It doesn't start with the engineers. It doesn't even start with people with decades of planning experience. This starts with staff working with stakeholders like the Business Association and institutions and individuals in the community to understand how the community, how individuals experience Williamson Road now, how they experience the good parts of Williamson Road, how they experience the less good parts of Williamson Road, and let the vision for what Williamson Road can be in the future, should be in the future, come from the community working with staff, with technical support from us. So the first phase of this project was to work with the community to create a vision that I'll share with you in a moment. That was, I guess, almost a year ago that we were working on that phase. The second phase that was into last fall was really looking at some choices, some design interventions, some safety countermeasures, to use the lingo of the planning profession, and share those and how they work, how they don't work, and how they might be combined to yield a new design for Williamson Road. And then, again, working with the community, starting this summer to really get to a final design, although final, we'll get to that in a moment, and deploy something and show some change resulting from this community engagement and their choices. So the vision started with pulling together a steering committee, and I or staff can go into more details about the composition of the steering committee, but with some ground rules about how this was a place for everyone, not just, again, to learn from technical experts what the problems are and what's possible, but to learn from each other on the steering committee how they were using Williamson Road and the businesses and other institutions along it, and the neighborhoods behind those businesses and the institutions, but some ground rules about listening to each other, about respectfulness in terms of interchange and in terms of time constraints, and recognizing that this was not going to be a kumbaya exercise. This was an exercise where people really wanted to have their opinions heard and get towards some sort of mutually agreeable change. We and your staff deployed a large number of ways to engage the community. The steering committee I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, but a walking audit that it's possible one or more of you might have participated in that was a little over a year ago. Of course, a web presence, but more than that, not just let's put up an electronic survey and see who responds, but sending out postcards to every business and neighbor in the area, handing them out at events, going out to places where people were already gathering for festivals like the ones you described earlier. Yes, an online survey, presentations to neighborhood groups, and a set of boards and other tools that folks could use at their own community meetings. The steering committee has met 5 times over the past year and a half, well, not even year and a half, really since April of last year, and we'll meet again after the pilot, the demonstration project that I'll talk a little bit about in a moment, is deployed. The walk audit, this was part of the first steering committee meeting, so it was an opportunity not just for people to get to know each other and develop or strengthen those relationships, but to really experience walking along Williamson Road together. The postcard that I mentioned, and many of our materials were at least bilingual in English and Spanish. That included the postcards and the website and the survey. Poster boards to get people's feedback. These are obviously miniaturized, but these were large. People could make notes or post-it notes with their opinions. And they weren't just open questions like this, but also some visuals for people to respond to as well. A survey that was distributed by email to almost 3,000 email addresses that had previously shown interest in Williamson Road, Facebook, Instagram, and received over 700 responses, which in our experience is a fairly healthy response rate, and indicated that there was, unsurprisingly, I guess, there was interest, but it is always gratifying when people actually respond with their opinions and don't just have quiet interest. Some focus groups to make sure that we, and when I say we again, I'm including staff that did most of this work, that we heard from folks who maybe weren't responding to other ways of being engaged, bringing together focus groups for local business owners, for churches and church members, for schools and school community members. And here's a classic word cloud of some of the things that we heard in response at those focus groups. And interestingly, right, a few of these relate to transportation. So this is always a good example and reminder that what we're really talking about, yes, is how people get around, but ultimately it's about what do we do with our public resources, and our transportation right-of-way is one of our primary public resources. So how are people experiencing that? Is it helping or impeding them in trying to be in a place where their families can thrive, in a place where students can be safe, in a place where housing is affordable? Not all of these things directly relate in obvious ways to transportation, but transportation is a lever that can help in a lot of these ways. So the collaborative vision that the steering committee created based on all of this feedback and their own opinions and relationships is that Williamson Road will be a vibrant multinational business and residential community that creates, connects, and supports sustainable, safe, and accessible destinations. I'll note that our work at Nelson Nygaard Safety, sustainability, equity are always principles that we come into the work with. This is not directed by us in any way. It is always gratifying and really not that surprising that the community's priorities, especially in a place like Roanoke, where clearly people have a high value on the place that they live and love, that those themes came up in the vision as well. So phase 2 was really about, okay, we have a vision, we have more of a shared understanding of the current conditions on Williamson Road and how they relate to safety and other aspects. What are the sorts of things we can do about it? So I used the term earlier, the planner term of art, safety countermeasures. It basically means what are the sorts of design interventions that we can make that help make the system safer. Some of these things can be related to people and how people behave. Some are related specifically to the design of our transportation facilities, and some relate to the speeds of the vehicles primarily that are being driven on those facilities. I'll note that this graphic, these wonderful little icons and the links that of course are not helpful to you since they're in a PowerPoint up on a screen right now, are all straight from the U.S. Federal Highways Administration. And while this administration has made lots of comments about how they perceive transportation and priorities for transportation, this material about these safety countermeasures, road diets included, is still prominently featured on the Federal Highways Administration website. So these are endorsed safety countermeasures from the federal level and from VDOT as well. So how do we evaluate whether a particular safety countermeasure or bundle of countermeasures, a design, let's call it, might help conditions on Williamson Road? Well, through a few lenses. One, that of road user safety, of course. That's the safety of people driving, the safety of people walking, biking, waiting for transit. That's also, can people access the businesses alongside it in vehicles, and that's for service to those businesses, for deliveries, et cetera, but also customers and employees, and for multimodal access, for walking, biking, and transit, which I know are all things that are important in the mix of ways to get around in Roanoke. And let's not be blind to the level of effort, which includes cost of some of these countermeasures. That's another thing that we evaluate as we think about what might be feasible to change. So some of these graphics with the little green, yellow, red stoplight were graphics that we used in the public discussion about these safety countermeasures. This is not a complete readout of the report. There are other deeper presentations available from staff. So for example, here's a couple of ways we discussed with the steering committee the benefits of two different kinds of pedestrian priority signals with very wonky names. Rectangular rapid flashing beacons really rolls off the tongue, right? Pedestrian hybrid beacons, you know these as the pedestrian activated signals that either put flashing lights up or in some cases actually trigger a red light that's not at a street intersection. So for road users, you see the columns, so how does this help road user safety? How does it help or harm vehicular access, multimodal access? And how can it really help, or how applicable is it to Williamson Road? And you see just a couple of, whoops, I forgot to advance the slide, excuse me. Somebody holler if I forget that again. You see that, not all are obviously applicable to Williamson Road as it is now. For example, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is just a warning light, it's yellow lights, really isn't a great solution on 4-lane roadways at unmarked crosswalks, because you do have the opportunity for that situation where maybe the car closest to the sidewalk sees you and stops. You start proceeding out, and the other car, you're in the blind spot, and they can't see and ignore the flashing yellow lights. So not the best countermeasure for a situation like the current Williamson Road. So after going through and discussing those various countermeasures with the steering committee, and of course with staff, we developed a set of alternatives, pulling together multiple safety countermeasures into alternatives. There were 2 alternatives, each with 2 options. So the first alternative was essentially the current road layout, which means basically 4 moving vehicle travel lanes, with 2 options that I'll get to more detail in a moment. And then lane reconfiguration, really reallocating the existing street space to have 2 moving travel lanes through the Williamson Road corridor and 1 center left turn lane, with 2 options again under that alternative. So graphically shown, these are, I know not everyone's as familiar with looking at road diagrams as some of us. So this is basically as if you're looking down at the street. So you see in the top, basically existing conditions. Can we, working with existing conditions, make the crosswalks, the existing crosswalks at intersections safer with smaller interventions? That could be upgrading the signals, that could be providing refuges at the median or creating medians in some cases, but basically relatively light touch changes to the existing road. And in the second of these options with, again, 4 moving travel lanes, expanding on one side to have a side path. This is an idea that came from the community, that was a suggestion from community members who didn't like the idea of the road diet in previous iterations of design here. I do need to note that expanding the right-of-way, basically, this would require expanding the right-of-way to add a side path in addition to the 4 travel lanes. That would affect, and correct me if I get it wrong, approximately 60 properties, and would actually require taking property that would affect the building on the property in close to 20 cases in this segment of Williamson Road. So while that's possible, that has significant impacts that, in our experience, are hard to rationalize in many cases. The next alternative, and its 2 options, are lane reconfiguration, so reallocating the right-of-way. In the first option, B1 at the top, this is more of an interim condition, could be done within existing right-of-way, basically. So it's taking, in essence, it's taking what's currently a 4th travel lane, splitting it onto both sides, creating both protected bike lanes, so bike lanes that have a buffer between them and moving traffic, and also provide a buffer between moving traffic and the sidewalk. So it's safer for people walking, obviously safer for people biking. And notably, and this is all borne out in the safety countermeasures research and in the impacts that we discussed with the committee, safer for drivers without significantly lowering without significantly increasing the delay for people driving. And in fact, making it easier in many cases to, for example, make the left turn that you want to make into a business, because now you're only crossing, you have a protected place to wait, you're not worried about getting rear-ended, and you only have to wait for 1 lane of traffic to have a gap to get safely across rather than the 2 moving lanes that you have to wait for now. The bottom option on alternative 2 here is basically what could be done in the future with moving the curb and doing other more significant improvements. The top one can basically be done with restriping and repainting existing paved space, and the bottom option would require more construction work, basically, and perhaps some right-of-way acquisition. So what did the steering committee think? Overwhelmingly, I think in any election we would call this an overwhelming result. It was not an election, it was a preference, it was expression of preference, but 13 of the 17 steering committee members who voted for option B1, which I'll just flip back to here for a moment, which is within the existing right-of-way, within the existing curbs, reallocating street space in that what's, again, in a wonky transportation planning term, is called a 4-to-3 lane conversion, making space for protected cycling infrastructure and buffering the sidewalks. Oh, and I guess I could have gone forward, because here's that, what I just described by going backwards. So we have several comments here. I recognize I'm just about out of time, so I'm going to breeze through these. Other comments from discussion with the steering committee member: because the option they prefer can be done relatively easily, it doesn't require major construction. Thinking about it as a pilot project makes sense. So what are the things that they want to see as outcomes from the pilot project? How do they want to evaluate it to know if it was a success? We don't want to presume it's a success. We, of course, have professional judgment that it will be, but need to see the evidence on the ground. So fewer crashes, lower speeds in school zones, increased walking, etc. And more specifically, ask the steering committee, moving to this slide, what specific data do you think that we should collect, or not we, staff should collect over the course of the pilot to give you some confidence in the potential impacts? Well, not the potential impacts, the revealed impacts of the pilot. So I have substantial detail on what people want there. I'm going to quickly shift in my remaining 12 seconds, possibly another 30 if you'll allow it, to talk about another aspect of the Thriving Communities program, which is the USDOT providing direct support to, in this case, the Greater Williamson Road Business Association, to do small facade improvement grants to local businesses. Some might again say, what does this have to do with transportation? making Williamson Road safer, more vibrant, living up to the vision that we heard through the steering committee and through citizens isn't just about transportation improvements. It's about other kinds of improvements, and this is one small way that you can start to show change. And for citizens who get frustrated that when change happens, we don't know about it, we don't like it, when we want change to happen, it seems to take forever, why doesn't it happen faster? This can at least provide a down payment on change in ways that people can see. So some before pictures. If you've been out along Williamson Road in the last couple of weeks, this painting was just done the week before last, I think, so it's fresh. Some before pictures and some after pictures. Again, this is a modest program, and the results are lovely. They're not transforming Williamson Boulevard. They're providing those seeds of what's possible. And I think, in terms of what's next, this is where we, unfortunately for us, have to hand off the ball to staff to carry this to the finish line. The Thriving Communities program is wrapping up at the end of this month. And so the next steps are, and I'm sure that Ross and Dwayne can speak to this, the next steps involve working with the steering committee a little bit more to finalize the design, including at intersections, which is really where complications tend to happen the most. Getting out there and with the existing repavement schedule, which would have this deployed sometime in the fall, getting a pilot deployed and doing that data monitoring and evaluation while the pilot is underway to help people understand the impacts of the change. So that's what I have for you today. I'm happy to take questions or hear discussion. And again, I'm sure those guys in the back or Valerie would be happy to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fornash. Excellent presentation. I'll ask council colleagues what initial questions we have. Mr. Volleson.
I guess mine more of a comment. I wanted to thank you and the team for doing this. I know that there was a lot of questions about public participation and making sure that we're going in and doing what is best for the community by hearing from everybody in the community and taking our time. And I really appreciate the fact that we're doing a bit of tactical urbanism piloting, trying to see if that works. I know that we tried that on another street recently. That's the best way to, in my opinion, to do things because it's kind of scientific. You try it, you see what happens, and if it doesn't work out, then you have to go back and make adjustments. So I really appreciate the time and effort that you and our Department of Public Works, especially transportation teams, have been putting into this, and look forward to the pilot with the Williamson Road in the near future.
Thank you. Ms. Powers.
I just want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say that you had done something like this before, similar in Arlington County?
Oh, see, I chaired the Planning Commission in Arlington County. We did a lot of stuff. In Arlington, yes, there have absolutely been successful 4-to-3 road diets, very successful, in fact. It's a little bit like any change to the way people get around. There's a lot of anxiety before it happens, and then when it happens, people are like, oh, it's fine.
Right.
No, it is better. You're right. So you don't want to at all dismiss people who are concerned because it's reasonable to be concerned. A lot of the infrastructure changes from a generation ago in particular, you kind of wish we'd done it differently. I've been doing this long enough now to see some things from the first part of my career on the design side and on the engagement side that thankfully we're doing better now. We don't have all the answers,
from your
but,
comments from 2015 to 2019, 389 crashes, so do you have results of how that decreased by
Absolutely.
doing these changes?
Absolutely.
And so at some point in time, could we have that information? I think that would be very helpful.
I'd be happy to. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Mr. Nash.
On one of the slides where it says flex post, are those referring to kind of like those yellow vertical, I think I call them like ballards or whatever, but are those what those are?
Yeah, in general, right, when you're trying to create some sort of safe separation for vehicles from more vulnerable travelers, people biking, people walking, you want some horizontal separation, some space, and some vertical indications of separation, right? You've probably seen where it's just low concrete dividers, and that can be a challenge for drivers to see sometimes. They can run into them. The posts provide a more visual cue for drivers that that they shouldn't be going there, but also because they're flexible, if somebody were to hit them, and we've all seen those knocked down, they're not that hard to replace, and they're not going to do a ton of damage to the vehicle, right? So, but you're exactly right. Flex posts are the white or sometimes yellow vertical posts, usually about 3 feet tall.
Yeah, yeah. I've hit a few on Shenandoah.
Slow down.
I wasn't speeding. It was a big old 18-wheeler coming on one side. He said, boop, boop.
I'm glad you hit that and not a pedestrian.
Misdirection. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I wanted to also say thank you. I think it is really important that we make Williamson Road safer for our residents that live around in those neighborhoods, for people accessing our schools in the area, our parks, the library. It's just really unsafe to get around, and I think for our residents and for our businesses that we know we can do better to make it safer, and I think make it a more attractive place for people to visit. I was going to echo, so thank you very much, and I appreciate all of the staff working on this, because I know it's been in the past controversial, and I know we will hear from people with their opinions, and I look forward to that. So just thank you for working on this. I echo what Councilwoman Power said. It would be really helpful, I think, to have some of the data on what some of these possible changes might mean for, percentage of reductions, or I know it's sometimes hard to calculate that, but we know it's a really dangerous road, and you gave us the data on injuries and deaths, but what might we expect to see if we make some of these improvements? And then, I had a question, you might have answered this, but, there's a difference between a dedicated bike lane and a protected bike lane. In the option B1 that you mentioned that has the bike lane, that striped gray area, is that a protected barrier?
The gray area, our recommendation would be that it has both sort of low concrete separators as well as the flex posts that Mr. Nash was asking about. But it is both that horizontal separation or a buffer and that vertical separation.
Gotcha, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's really important where we can that we build not just dedicated but protected bike lanes to maximize safety, especially for people learning how to bike or with kids on the back. And the last thing, just to be a little bit cheesy, we keep using this term road diet, but someone, I think it was Dr. Laura Hartman a couple years ago, said she encouraged us to use the term road buffet, because our roads are not just for cars. If we all believe that we should share the road, that they're meant for, especially today, people getting around on scooters and bikes and motorcycles, that we're talking about creating more options for people to get around in a safe way. And so I don't expect that we'll start calling them road buffets moving forward, but I think the language on how we talk about this is really important, and I think people do have a lot of anxiety, and that's understandable, but it's just so important that we make it safer, and I think we can do that, and I'm really confident that we're going to get a better outcome for Williamson Road, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Mr. Hagan?
How wide are the lanes on Williamson Road currently?
12 feet? 12 feet.
Okay, so under option B1, which I think is the one that's up, yeah.
It is.
We would be reducing the lanes by 2 feet each side?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got one additional question.
Mr. Nash?
With these type of lane reconfigurations, how does that work with public transportation and buses being able to pull over? Because if and I want us to make sure we have protected bike lanes, but if we have these barriers, how does that make it possible for buses to pull over, not to impede traffic, and then create a situation where we have people trying to go around the bus into this shared turn lane and then colliding with each other? So how do we work around that?
You're exactly right that the details really matter, right? If you just were to leave the bus stop the way it is currently with a flag and have the protected bike lane running through, are people getting on and off the bus supposed to cross the bike lane without any indication of how? It really depends on how you want to approach it, right? One way is, and my mom lives in Baton Rouge, there's a street that's recently had a road buffet applied to it in Baton Rouge, and what they did was actually, in the places where the bus stops, they decided it was better to have the bus stop and block traffic for 20 seconds while it was loading and unloading than to have the possibility of people zipping around it in the two-way left turn lane. So there's actually an island in that section of the two-way left turn lane so that people can't do that. And might it frustrate drivers occasionally to have to wait 20 seconds for a bus to load and unload? It might, but it effectively slows them down, which is one of the goals of a lot of these safety countermeasures. There are other measures as well, including having the bus turn out, as you were describing, typically just past an intersection where bus stops are best located. And in that case, you can pull the bike lane around the bus stop. It would be unprotected for a segment of bike lane, right? Because the bus needs to get over and then back. Anyway, I'm going into the details, but there's several different kinds of designs that can be applied to solve just those sort of problems.
Okay, all right.
Or conflicts, I guess, not problems.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Got a question? I just have a couple additional ones. One of the questions that has continuously emerged is just the amount of traffic on Williamson Road and clear data. I was talking with someone recently, and indication I got was, well, let me ask it this way. Has there been a comparison done on the current traffic flow on Williamson Road as compared to other major corridors in the city?
In the city, well, we do have relatively recent traffic counts from Williamson Road, and I can tell you it's well within the range of where road buffets or street reallocations are effective without significantly causing people to, for example, divert through the neighborhoods. The road volume tends to be about the same after this. It's the speeds that are lower.
Yeah, because I think one of the questions that people ask, and maybe it's part of that initial anxiety about change, is that when you reduce the number of lanes, you're potentially increasing congestion on a street. And that's in part why I asked the question, because I don't believe that's the intention. It's actually designed, I think, to help traffic flow much better.
It does. I'm sure we've all had the experience, I've had the experience for sure, of you're going down a two-lane undivided road like this, somebody has stopped to go left, you're pulling into the right lane, you're pulling back into the left. Effectively, 2 through lanes like that does not provide twice the capacity of 1 through lane. It's significantly diminished. It provides more than 1 through lane of capacity, vehicle capacity, but not 2. And because the left-turning vehicles can get out of the way of progressing traffic here, in general, road diets for streets of this kind of traffic volume do not create more congestion. They do reduce average speeds, but they don't create more congestion. Most congestion happens at signals, right? It's not really what happens between signals. And by congestion here, I'm using congestion and delay kind of interchangeably. Most delay, meaning you're not going the speed limit or you're not going a reasonable speed, happens because you're stopped at signals. And bigger roads, intersecting with bigger roads, have longer signal times. We all know that. That's one other thing that you can do once you have more smaller streets, more two-lane streets, is simplify the signals so there's not as much delay at intersections as well. That's more of a network thing. It requires more systemic transformation than one road transformation. But it's not about increasing congestion at all. And in many cases, it can really simplify travel and make speeds more consistent.
One thing that I noted, and I appreciated the work you all did on this, one of the concepts that has come through the years is this idea of a shared path. I think you called it something a little different.
Shared use path.
Shared use path.
Yeah.
And while I think there's merit for that kind of a path, depending on the location, I've had some concerns about what the challenges would be if that were continuous. Could you recap for me what, in your research on this, what the implications would be if we added that shared use path?
Well, thinking back to that sort of evaluation of what is it we're looking to change with redesigning Williamson Road. The shared use path does a couple things, right? It provides a safer place for people to walk and bike, right? That's unassailable. On one side of the street at least. If you're trying to access a destination on the other side of the street, including a bus stop on the other side of the street, it doesn't provide those same benefits. What it doesn't really do is make vehicle traffic any safer, right? It doesn't change the number of those dangerous collisions, those collisions that are at an angle that cause significant injury and damage and death. And so there are real benefits of going from 4 to 3 lanes independently of how you are using that reclaimed space. In this case, keeping 4 lanes, adding space for a side path in addition to the impacts I just talked about, the impacts on the adjoining properties are significant. And those are the numbers that I offered verbally that weren't in the presentation because they're relatively newly developed by staff, but 60 plus or 60-ish properties impacted and needing to, I don't want to use the word take that as a legal meaning, but to at least get easements on private property to accommodate that shared use path.
Right, thank you. Could you talk briefly about how this will enhance pedestrian safety?
So while it doesn't feel safe currently walking along Williamson Road because the sidewalks are narrow, in many cases right up against the back of the curb with the street, it's crossing Williamson Road where people feel the most vulnerable, of course. And in a 4-lane, at most intersections along Williamson, there is no refuge, there's no island in the middle, and so a pedestrian is facing 4 12-foot lanes, so 50 feet, 48 feet of unprotected crossing, needing to monitor threats from vehicles coming, even if they're out of signal, threats from vehicles that may or may not be stopping in a place that's behind a crosswalk, threats from vehicles turning left or right in their path. So there are a lot of conflicts that weren't on that diagram that are about what pedestrians need to keep an eye on. So it simplifies the number of threats pedestrians have to pay attention to when they're crossing the road, provides space for a pedestrian refuge or median at intersections. So it really can relieve a lot of the dangers to pedestrians at intersections, in addition to if the space reclaimed by going from 4 to 3 traffic lanes is used for buffering the sidewalk, either with a protected bike lane or with, you can imagine green space and trees as well in a future, that provides both a more attractive environment for people to walk, but also more separation from moving vehicles and real safety, not just perceived safety.
Thank you. Two more questions, I'll be finished. We've talked a lot about how this will reduce accidents and crashes along the way with a center turning lane.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence, and maybe from Arlington County, do you see some accidents occur in the turning lane just because of the proximity of where people are trying to get, or is that part of the learning in how to navigate that center turning lane?
First of all, the center turn lane, there are a lot of driveways along Williamson Road, we know that, so there are a lot of places where people do want to turn left, but it's important that it not be a continuous center turn lane, because then people can use it to, behave badly, to drive dangerously. So if the design is done well, meaning that center turn lane is interrupted periodically with medians and other things that prevent people from de facto using it as a high-speed, get around traffic or other dangerous maneuver space, it shouldn't create more conflicts than it avoids, if that makes sense. So, we can all imagine I'm going to turn left, someone's coming to turn left at me, but you see that's one conflict. You're both slowing down because you're preparing to turn, so that's easier, that's the word, for people to navigate, right, to deal with safely than the kind of situation I talked about before, where you're waiting in the left lane to turn, you're waiting for multiple streams of traffic coming at you to both have a gap at the same time, et cetera. It's just a much more difficult situation.
Okay. Last question is, I noted in your presentation that the pilot project would be 6 months, approximately. When do we anticipate that beginning? And I ask that because I would want to make sure that we give plenty of advance notice that this pilot is happening and why the pilot is happening, because even with advance notice and telling every citizen directly that this is happening, we will get a lot of calls and emails, and so I want to get this out as early as possible.
That's good defense, but it's also a really important part of a pilot is the education part, right? And springing something on people is never the best way to educate them. So you're welcome to come up and talk timing.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for that question. Right now, what we want to do is time it so that we can line up with our next paving cycle. So what we're talking about is a fog seal on the existing paint marking out there. to essentially darken those lines out and then come back in with a new lane reconfiguration. So we typically pave starting in the spring, running through about November timeframe. So we'd want to do the demo starting this fall, September timeframe, run for about six months, and then that would allow us to go into a fresh cycle of pavement with what we've learned during the demo. And of course, some of the islands that Mr. Fornash was talking about would have to come with time as we start developing the more in-depth detail. But this is, again, going to be an iterative phase process where we use the money and the resources we have available along the way.
Thank you very much. Right, Ms. Sanchez-Jones.
Mr. Campbell, I have a question. How is the city planning to address all those drivers that will be cutting through all the neighboring streets?
So we've already started to address some of that right now with some traffic calming in the side streets, and I'm happy to share with the manager some of those efforts that she can then pass along to council. Part of the demonstration project is collecting data not only before the demonstration starts, but during the demonstration, and some of that will actually be managing or collecting that data out into those neighborhoods to figure out if we do have some cut-through traffic, and again, look at traffic calming options if they do happen to have some cut-through traffic to address that.
Will stop signs be added to that?
Typically, we don't use stop signs for traffic calming. We do have some other remedies that do work remarkably well for traffic calming, and like I said, we've done that in Oakland specifically, and happy to share that with the manager that can then be passed along to council.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions?
I have one question.
Mr. Nash.
Where are we at? Because, I like a lot of what I'm hearing, but one thing that I'm big on in general is the enforcement of it. And we all know that we're just going to have reckless drivers that no matter what we do with manipulating the lanes or the street, the configuration, they're going to want to speed. They're going to want to cut through the neighborhoods and speed through those neighborhoods. And so with something like photo speed enforcement, where are we at as a city with our thinking, or maybe just within y'all's department with where we're at with implementing that or maybe piloting that? And I feel like this is a great time to pilot that on Williamson Road.
I'm moving over to this side here. Councilmember Nash, that's a great question. Right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, speed cameras are only allowed within school zones, and that's something that we've been talking about with the police department. You've heard me talk about the complete systems model before. Really boiling it down into simplistic terms, it's the 3 E's. It's engineering, which is what we've talked about here. It's education, which is also some of what's included in this process, and communicating with the community. It's also part of our DMV safety campaign, and then it's the enforcement. So all 3 of those have to work together in concert in order for a successful project. And of course, we're grateful to our partners in the Roanoke Police Department that help us with that third element of enforcement.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Fornash. It's great to meet you. Thanks for your hard work. Mr. Campbell, Mr. Dardan, thank you all. All right, Ms. Turner, next briefing.
Number 2. So this afternoon, I'm also pleased to provide another update on our strategic planning efforts that plays a central role in shaping the quality of life in our city, the 5-year update to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. As you recall, the original 10-year master plan was adopted in 2019. To ensure our plan remains responsive and forward-thinking, the Parks and Recreation Department has partnered with a consulting team at Barry Dunn to conduct a comprehensive midpoint review. Last fall, that team led a broad community engagement process, one that included public forums, focus groups, and stakeholder interviews, all aimed at answering 3 questions. How are we doing on the goals we set in 2019? Are those goals still aligned with public priorities? And where might we need to adjust our course? Here with us today, we have Art Thatcher, a nationally recognized Parks and Recreation planner with over 30 years of experience. So please join me in welcoming him as he walks us through the highlights of this important mid-plan update. Mr. Thatcher, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to come and give you an update of where we are on the master plan update. And so here's our agenda. We've already kind of done introductions talk a little bit about the project approach, a little bit about demographics and trends, and then really go into the engagement piece with the different tools that we use, and then closing remarks with, we've developed goals and objectives that I'll go over with you based on the data that we've heard. And so this is a five-phase approach. And slow down, I'm trying to get in these slides in the 20-minute time. Five-phase approach. The first, as you mentioned, back last fall, we did our discovery session. We came, worked with the staff. We also reviewed the 2019 master plan, looked at other planning documents, looked at your budget, your annual reports, and those things. So really kind of getting a really good view of the background materials that we needed. Then we went into our engagement piece, which I'll go into in detail. And now we've done the analysis of that engagement, and we're in this fourth phase, this visioning phase with the project, looking to finalize the project in the next 3 months. And so just a little bit about the community as a whole, kind of looking at your age distribution. You can see that your youth, so those under 19 and under, make up about 23% of your population, which is pretty similar to your older adults, that 55 to 74, and then your adult population, that 35 to 54. You've got a smaller senior population and a smaller young adult population. So as we look at your programming and your facilities and those things, we want to keep that in mind as you're at the distribution side. As you look at your the next 5-year growth, based on the Esri projections, 2023, your population was just under 100,000, looking to grow to about 100,500 in the next 5 years. As you look at your racial diversity, you can see that the white population since 2010 has been decreasing, as well as your African-American population has remained pretty constant. What you see the growth in is in those 2 or more races, growing from 2.8% to almost 9% over that time period. The other thing that we note is your Hispanic origin. A lot of people confuse that as being a race. It is not. You can be Hispanic in any race. And so it has shown about a 3.5% growth between 2010 and 23. So as we look at national and regional trends, we use the National Recreation and Parks Association, Athletic Business, and several other sources. You can see kind of the 2 charts on the left-hand side, local participation in sports, as well as local participation in outdoor recreation, compares the city of Roanoke to the state of Virginia. You can see in the sports category, golf is your highest participation. You're pretty much, you have a higher participation rate or a lower participation rate than the state as a whole in those areas. So golf, basketball, and then followed by tennis for your sports. As you look at outdoor sports, hiking, again, is your #1 participation, followed by road biking, and then freshwater fishing. On the right-hand side shows some of the national trends in recreation, as your parks and recreation and your facilities being health centers, adaptive PE, adaptive recreation, as well as nature-based activities, and then access to the internet and computers. So as I mentioned, we spent a lot of time in the public engagement piece. We believe in kind of being transparent and as exclusive as possible. And so we know that it can bring awareness to the community of your programs, as well as build support for the department as well as the city. So we did a series of community meetings, online engagement, internal staff activities. It's very important to engage the staff. If we don't engage the staff kind of at all levels of this, I can give them the best plan in the world, but if they weren't engaged in the process, they're not going to implement it. We did a mailed statistically valid survey. One of the great things is that we used the same firm that did your 2019 survey, so we were able to do longitudinal comparisons, especially since COVID hit right in the middle of all of that, so it gave us some really good data. We held some in-person workshops, as well as conducted some pop-up events at some of your activities. And so those in-person engagements, we engaged 54 or 51 staff in a SWOT analysis of the department and our programs. And we had 54 people participate in the focus groups. We did 4 leadership interviews, and then we had 47 people participate in the public workshops. And so we used Social Pinpoint, which is our online portal. We did an internal for the staff. You can see we had 51 users that participated in it, and 150 views that we gathered comments for the SWOT analysis. So we asked about 3 areas of improvement or new opportunities for the Parks and Recreation Department, and this is the staff's responses. So collecting community customer service data, partnering with outside agencies, interdepartmental partnerships, updating your recreation facilities, the need for a skate park, and then the need for full-time entry-level recreation positions. There was an opportunity for them to provide open comments, and as we looked at those comments, we put them into 2 categories, parks, trails, and facilities ideas, and then resources needed for the departmental success. And so some of the things that we heard from staff was the need for a competitive indoor pool, a dog park at River's Edge, as well as playground at River's Edge, updating your current recreation centers, and that skate park. On the resource side, additional funding for mowing and tree work, a compensation study within the region for staff retention, as well as recruitment, updating park maintenance equipment, and then adding adaptive and therapeutic recreation programs. So from there, we held in-person focus groups. We had 54 people participate in the focus groups. We did them at different areas of the city so that we were going out to the community and not having the community just come here for a focus group. We moved around the city. So as we asked about areas of improvement, and I'm not going to read all of these, and these are not in an order of priority. These were how they kind of came out from the different focus groups. Additional resource allocations for trails and maintaining trails, increasing the priority on maintenance of trails, less volunteer reliance, tennis court, better maintenance, existing facilities, maintenance of and increasing the budget. Washington Park, green space, has some maintenance challenges. Geographic equity of park distributions and trails, restroom facilities, and you're going to hear restrooms throughout this process. Yeah. And then better utilization of Elmwood, of the amphitheater. So we also asked about additional programs that the participants would like to see, adaptive and therapeutic, introductions to sports, so your traditional sports as well as to adventure sports. Really, the community wanted to get that opportunity. So you have a lot of great mountain bike trails around here, and what they came out and said is, we need to learn how to ride those trails. If I don't know that a Black Diamond is the most experienced, and I buy a brand new bike and I go jump on a Black Diamond trail and I crash and burn, that $3,000 bike's going to sit in the garage. So having that introduction to those adventure sports, kayaking and those things, was something that we heard quite often. Adult and cultural programming, outdoor recreation programs, just free play, the opportunity for free play, green spaces for the neighborhood to get together or friends to get together for free play. We asked about additional facilities and amenities, and splash pad was one of the things that came out. Nature trails and community gardens, adding convenience amenities to your current parks and fields. So things like shade structures, benches, water fountains, bike racks, those kind of convenience amenities. Small amphitheater at selected parks. Again, we hear the skate park, an 18-hole disc golf course, indoor aquatic facility, and then a climbing facility for outdoor bouldering. So we asked about all of the things that we talked about. What would their top priorities be? And so providing additional resources dedicated to parks and recreation, maintenance, and trails, creative and inclusive programs at convenient amenities, prioritizing tennis and underserved populations, again, more restrooms, plan for growth that as the city continues to grow, balancing and sustaining what currently is working, so maintaining what you currently have and then developing support for those needed enhancements, and then making all your decisions on data-driven and transparent data. So then we held those work sessions, and one of the things that we did is we provided data to the participants, and then we used a tool that's called Menti, which is a poll that they can take that's interactive while we're doing it. You know, in a lot of cases, you know, you'll see like storyboards where people do dotocracy and some of those things. This is an opportunity for them to participate while they are there, and then they can see the results immediately as we're going through the meeting. And so 47, again, at different locations in the community, so that we were going out to the community. One of the things we asked about were the hard courts. You know, we heard from the focus groups, you know, that the court, you know, those needed to be repaired. So we asked, of the hard courts that are out there, what would your priority be? And you can see repairing and repurposing, repairing the basketball courts, tennis courts, and your roller hockey as your top priorities for those workshops. We also asked about, you know, prioritizing between these three, looking at recreation centers. So a large neighborhood recreation center anywhere in the city with more amenities, gym space, fitness areas, program space, you can see was the number one amongst those groups. Renovating your smaller neighborhood centers for programming and small gathering, especially in northern Roanoke, was number two, and then renovating those smaller neighborhood centers in the southwest region was the third. Those were the top ones that came out. And so, I said, we did a statistically valid survey. We did a random sample mailed survey to the community with the goal of getting 400 responses back. We did larger than that, and so, you know, a greater than a 95% reliability rate. And so we mailed it as well as having it as an online version. There was also a Spanish translation option with the survey. And so you can see, comparing the 2019 to 2024, when we ask about visitation, household visit facilities in the past year, you can see that there was an increase from 82% to 89% over that 5-year period. So people are using your parks and your facilities more over that time period. We asked about what they were doing at those facilities when they did visit. And you can see the blue is the 2024, the gray is the 2019. And you can see that pathways and trails, your regional parks, the amphitheater, your soft surface trails, and your neighborhood parks are those top 5. And they were pretty much the same top 5 from the 2019, with the exception of your playgrounds. Showed a little bit less use, but I would imagine going to some of those regional parks, they're using the playgrounds as well. So then we asked about satisfaction and you know, how the participants would rate. And so asked about rating the level of maintenance on a 4-point scale from excellent to poor. You can see in 2019, 29% rated it as excellent, 55% as good. In 24, you can see those numbers fell off a bit So, going to 20% for excellent and 48% for good. So, again, that's, we heard that from your focus groups, that maintaining what you currently had was a priority and what was really needed to happen. And so we asked about overall quality of your programs. On this, you see a growth in the ratings of the programs. So in 2019, 31% excellent. There was a little bit of drop of the excellent, but you can see growth grew almost 13% for the good ratings. So then we asked about your recreation centers. And again, you see a little bit of a decline in the overall quality of the recreation centers. And then we asked about, how do you learn about, because one of the things that we hear is, well, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know you had that facility. And so we asked about, how do you learn about programs and facilities and those things? And you can see that in 2019, friends and neighbors was the #1 way that people learned about what was going on. That was #2 and maintained that #2, same rate, same 53%, but you can see social media jump from 41% to 63% over that 5-year period. So people are getting their information about programs and services from social media. Play Roanoke, your website, almost doubled in its use, 41% from 25%, with your banners in the park remaining about the same. One of the interesting pieces to note is that the newspaper was 26% and the radio was 21% in 2019. Wow. Both of those dropped to 10 and 7% as to how people are getting their information now. So not your typical means of information gathering. So then we asked about how supportive they were of improvements to the Parks and Recreation system, and on a scale of 1 to 4, with very supportive to not supportive at all, you can see that as you look at the left-hand side, that dark blue is the very supportive. You can see that upgrading your existing neighborhood and community parks, as well as developing trails and connecting trails throughout the community, were the top 2 at 53%. And then aggregate, developing new and connecting existing trail system, upgrading your existing trails, and then acquiring open space, really kind of rounded out your top 5 there for #1 choices as well as overall. So we asked about what 4 items they would be willing to fund through your tax dollars. And so you can see it was it's the same question as was asked in 2019. And you can see that the top choice in both was upgrading your existing neighborhood and community parks, which is, again, a theme that we've heard throughout. Upgrading your existing trails grew by 11%. Developing additional trails and connectivity, again, grew by 8%. And then developing new and connecting existing trails grew. Your increasing your focus on developing the river stayed about the same. You can see the only ones that really decreased were kind of repurposing some of your inactive parks and amenities, as well as upgrading your outdoor pool. So we also asked about support for developing facilities within the system. And so you can see that paving multipurpose trails, adding restrooms at your existing facilities, and then all-inclusive playgrounds for children and your natural surface trails. Really those top 4 that the community was very supportive of. You still had good support in the others as well. And then we asked about which 4 items would you be most willing to fund through your tax dollars. And you can see again, adding restrooms in existing parks was the #1, followed by paved multipurpose trails, inclusive playgrounds for children, and then natural surface trails. You can see that as you kind of get past those top 3, the support gets a little bit less, and a lot of it decreases from the the 2019. So you see a change in priority of what the community is willing to invest their tax dollars in. So then we had our interactive portal, which is social pinpoint, sorry. And so it offers multiple tiles to get into. And I'm going to quickly kind of go through these. We had almost 1,500 site visits, 1,000 unique visitors that contributed to our survey. There's an interactive mapping tool. There was a budget priority tool that was included. You can see in the survey the top ratings, again, restrooms, natural surface trails, trees and shade structures were those top priorities for amenities. We asked about trails and pathways. You can see kind of creating new specialty riding amenities like a BMX or pump tracks, and then focusing on investing and improving your natural surface trails. The mapping tool, you were able to drop a pin anywhere kind of in the city and leave a comment. And you can see on the side, you can see the number of comments that were dropped and where those pins were. And they related to connectivity, dog parks, greenway safety, sports facilities, park improvements, and then maintenance and access. Again, budget priorities, soft surface trails, splash pads, greenways and playgrounds is where people were investing. They were given $100 and were able to invest. We also looked at your recreation programs and services and did a deep dive into that. This is just the kind of the life cycle of the programs that we looked at. We looked at your maintenance and your operations. One of our staff people, who's a subject matter expert in maintenance and operations, came and spent several days with your staff, looked at how they were setting up, worked with them, and you can see the back, this diagram. He went through every one of their major functions and their service areas, listed all the functions, and then the amount of time, the amount of staff, and dollars and cents. So very, very inclusive. We provided all of that in a report to the staff, and then looked at how that equated to current personnel and additional needed personnel. And so as we look at kind of those recurring themes, increasing the city's budget and staffing dedicated to parks, recreation, maintenance, and trails, maintaining what you currently have, increasing connectivity, looking at your geographic equity, resources, becoming an entry point for citizens, and then developing additional non-traditional facilities like disc golf and climbing and those things. So we take all of those and we developed 4 goals and then a series of recommendations. We also, and I'm just going to flip through these, so we're on that 5 to 10 year from your original 2019 master plan. And so those were kind of where we're concentrating. You've done great work on the 0 to 5 years and have begun many of the projects in the 5 to 10 year period. Looking at your neighborhood equity map this is for neighborhood parks, your recreation centers. You can see the dot and then the service area around each one of those. The smaller circles are for your smaller centers. The larger circles are for your larger centers. And then looking at the priorities from 2019, and we'll compare those to the priorities that have come out. Many of them are the same, especially in the facilities and the amenities category. And so we set up goals. The first goal was to invest in your current infrastructure and address your aging facilities. And it has 10 objectives: maintaining and upgrading, adding indoor recreation space, and renovating and upgrading your existing outdoor aquatic facilities, renovating and replacing your failing facilities and amenities, upgrading your comfort and convenience and customer service amenities, as well as expanding your open space and parks. Also exploring opportunities to add trails, adding additional outdoor facilities and amenities, developing new amenities based on the 2019 level of service analysis, addressing your current and future needs for athletic fields, as well as monitoring your ADA access at your parks, trails, river access, and facilities. So the second goal was improving and enhancing programming and service delivery. So enhancing your special events, utilizing technology to improve customer service, continuing to grow programs and services accessible to all of your citizens, continuing to address your recreational programming, and then exploring opportunities for non-traditional recreation. The third goal was to continue to improve your organizational efficiency. So improving your existing level of service goals, maintaining your existing quality standards, continuing to be good stewards of the natural environment, staffing appropriately to meet demands and maintain your existing quality of service, maintaining and keeping current your standards of operation, and then increasing your potential partnerships within the community. And then finally, reducing your operational subsidy. So again, looking at additional funding through the pursuit of grants, continuing your current cost recovery and revenue generation practices, reviewing that on a regular basis and updating that as needed, partnering with other service providers, with developing programs, services, and facilities, and then some increase within the city budget for staffing dedicated to parks and recreation, maintenance, and trails. And so that's where we are. I'm sorry that I ran over. So our next step is we've developed an action table, and we're currently reviewing that with the staff. So we'll be finalizing that, be drafting the master plan in the next 3 to 4 weeks, presenting that to staff for their review, and then finalizing the plan. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
I know I threw a lot at you in a very short period of time.
Well, I appreciate all the engagement with the community and the thoroughness with which you've approached this process. Questions from council? Vice Mayor?
Thank you very much. I am excited about this process, and I really appreciate all of the work that you put into it, Mr. Thatcher, and all of our Parks and Rec staff. I just want to observe my opinion is it sounds like for us to talk about on the council side, one of the big needs is for us to think about budget and funding, and we're have just almost finished our budget process for next year, and I know that we will turn to the next year's work after that. So I think we currently budget about 2% of our overall budget to Parks and Rec, and I would love to see us increase that number to 5-6%, something higher in line with what I think some of our comparable jurisdictions that also are really leaning into their outdoor recreation economies and communities are dedicating. So that's on us to figure out how we do that in partnership with the community, of course. And then the last piece I wanted to ask about was I'm looking at the current plan, and so there's the funding and the budget piece that we have to give the Parks and Rec Department the money so that they can do what they need to do and have the appropriate staff. But then there's also the resources and the assets. And I think in the last page 33 of the existing plan, I know these numbers may change a little bit because our population projections may change a little bit, but we have, depending on how far out you go, 5-year forecast, 10-year forecast, 15-year forecast, in order to maintain park equity and levels of service, we, especially, and I'll share this with my colleagues later, but it tells us clearly where the need exists. And so in terms of some of our neighborhood and community parks, we could or should be adding 62 acres to our footprint. And I wonder, do we have any data on what we have done over the last 5, 10, 15 years in terms of the acreage of land that we have to work with? And what's our plan to meet some of these goals that we've identified in terms of the need for just more acreage? And it doesn't seem to me that we're heading in that direction. So how can we talk about that, or what are your thoughts on that?
So a couple of things. I mean, the department has provided us with the current acreage of what exists, and then what's been added over that 5-year period, which is, you haven't added anything, right? Yeah, so there's been no addition. So the table you're referring to is, I believe, the NRPA standard of like facilities per 1,000 residents and those things. One of the things that we do, Barry Dunn, as we look at kind of those level of service numbers, most comp plans use that acres per 1,000 residents as a level of service. We look at access to recreation components. So not only do we look at acres, but we look at what's available recreation-wise, which is why we talk about infill in your existing parks. So upgrading those and adding new amenities within those, because we know a 10-acre park that has an open field and a backstop and a playground is much different than a 10-acre park that has a ball field and a restroom facility and a perimeter walking trail and a playground and a picnic shelter. They're the same in the 10 acres per 1,000, but what those citizens around that park actually have access to is much greater with that other. So we look at that as we do the analysis in addition to the acres per 1,000. Because Roanoke's one of the core cities, and so you're pretty well built out. So it's really, you're in a redevelopment mode as opposed to, a community in Idaho where they're developing that, 1,000-acre, farmland that's no longer being farmed. So you're in a different situation here than they would be. So we do take that into account, and it is addressed will be addressed in the final plan.
One follow-up?
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to learning more. I look forward to staying involved. I think what I was seeing in your presentation, one of the number one activities that our residents say that they participate in with regard to outdoor activities is hiking, which is not, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know if it's a passive or active use activity, but it's not the same as a sport or something like that. So I just hope that as we move forward, we'll continue to put equal parts importance on passive use as well as active use, because a lot of our parks, you're right, we don't have a lot of space, and so as we cram more active uses into them, we lose some of those passive use opportunities like hiking, picnicking, taking a walk, reading a book, bird watching, all of those things. So I hope that we can strike that balance of making sure that we have something for all of our residents to offer. And thank you very much. I really appreciate all of your work.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other question? Well, I did notice a common theme of restrooms. And one question I have is, and you may not have an answer to this, but I suspect this has to do with upgrading our current restroom facilities in shelters and parks, as well as adding additional. Is that accurate?
Yes.
I'm seeing nods. And the last thing is, it was curious to me in the sports, outdoor sports that people are interested in, and I'm always curious when new sports emerge, whether they're just trends, passing trends, or if they're here for a while. And that's always been my question regarding pickleball. And I noticed that it pulled very low, but I'm seeing a lot of investments happening locally related to pickleball. Did you all glean any insights related to that?
So nationally, pickleball is the fastest growing sport, and it's not going anywhere. It's it's here to stay, and they do national championships now. It's as popular, if not more popular, than tennis. And so, yeah, it is. It's kind of like skateboards and even your mountain bikers and those things. It's a niche population, but they're very
dedicated,
enthusiastic. I was searching for the right word. A couple popped into my mind that I didn't want to say. Very enthusiastic about the sport and about its growth. The great thing about it is very social.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, where kind of a tennis match, doubles, 4 of you show up and you play for an hour and a half or 2, where with pickleball, you may have 20 that show up to 4 courts and they rotate, around. So they're constantly, playing and then also socializing.
Great, thank you.
I do.
Ms. Powers?
You just made me think
And then
of
Ms.
one.
Sanchez-Jones.
Putting aside, of course, our common request is our restrooms, but do you have data for what is the return on our investments as we add, more acreage or we add more programs? Do you have data? Do you look at that? And we're looking at what is our return on our investment versus what our increase in expenses would be for our city?
So we can look at using your current cost recovery program. We can look at, if you add X number of programs, it would generate X amount of money. I know that I think your current cost recovery is under 20%. So
Our current?
your current cost recovery is under 20%. And so, it would mean increasing fees to increase that percentage as well as adding new programs. And there's some ROI data that's available for adding amenities to parks, to adding restroom facilities at a park. Because it's not a revenue generator. Really, the return on your investment is the increase in use.
Sure.
And so, that's the kind of the double-edged sword, is increase in use means increase in maintenance, increase in programming. So, those all kind of fall together.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
I was just looking to see if anybody was interested in soccer field. That's what I'm looking. I didn't see the slide.
Yeah, so there is an increase in rectangle fields, which are soccer, lacrosse, football, those.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Thatcher.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right. We do have one item recommended for action this afternoon, and that's the acceptance and appropriation of the Virginia Department of Fire Program's Burn Building Grant. There's one measure and ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
Move the ordinance. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan and Ms. Sanchez-Jones, because it was a tie, I think. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of the Virginia Department of Fire Program's Live Fire Structure Grant made to the city, authorizing city manager or designee to execute any necessary documents necessary to accept such grant, appropriating 2024 through 2025 grant funds as detailed more fully infra, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Any discussion by council? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Thank you all. Next, we'll have comments of our city manager, Ms. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 comments today. On May 9th, 2025, the Roanoke Police Department recognized and congratulated the 13 graduates of the 2025 Advanced Citizens Police Academy. Over the course of 11 weeks, participants engaged in an in-depth educational experience covering key public safety functions, including the Community Response Bureau, Fugitive Task Force, and the Emergency Vehicle Operations. The program also included guided tours of the Roanoke Police Department, the jail, and the dispatch center, offering first-hand insight into law enforcement operations in the city of Roanoke. Number 2, we're excited for the upcoming summer season
as Fallon Park Pool has been filled and is currently being balanced in preparation for inspection. Washington Pool is on track for its ribbon-cutting ceremony on June 6th, with the opening day scheduled for June 7th. And final comment, in recent weeks, park staff have worked closely with Doug Jackson and the Arts Cultural Coordinator for the City of Roanoke to update the art installations along Elmwood Park Art Wall. The theme for 2025 art submission, Larger Than Life, celebrates the 15-year anniversary of Anne Glover's, iconic children dog sculpture located in Grandin Village, near Fire Station number 7. To date, 4 new pieces have been installed, with additional installations planned for the coming weeks, further enhancing the park's artistic landscape. If you haven't had a chance to see the new art, I encourage everyone to visit. And those conclude my comments for today.
Thank you very much. I got to see some of those at Local Colors. Yeah, they look great.
Including my red shoe.
Yes, including your red high heel shoe. So next we have our Public Matters follow-up, and welcome Katie Hedrick. Give us that update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of council. Breath of relief, this is a very short report back this session. Most of our comments over the past couple of council meetings have had to do with budget development, which obviously, accepting the one ordinance, everything has been put in place, so we will move past that. On April 7th, Valerie Brown, who is the executive director of BRABA, was here, and Ms. Sanchez-Jones requested a copy of the current membership of that association, so you'll find that attached to your council report. The only other item that I have to follow up on, at the May 5th meeting, Guy Bird, who's the Director of Philanthropy for the Adult Care Center in Salem, requested a reversal of the decision of the Human Services Advisory Board regarding a grant application, and I heard back from Jennifer Sorrells, who's the secretary of that particular board. She said Mr. Bird, attended an appeal with the board this past Friday, May 2nd, although he did not submit his budget, which did not disqualify him. His score was very low, and following the appeal, the board did not reach a consensus regarding funding. So they did address the matter. Unfortunately, they did not receive the grant in this cycle, but the advisory board did look into it and address the issue.
Thank you.
And that is all I have for this evening.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hedrick. All right, next we have reports of committees, and this is an opportunity for any boards or committees that we are liaisons to or members of to report back. Does anyone from council have any updates to share with us?
I don't have any.
Okay. Then we'll move to unfinished business. We do have an ordinance, number 43198, on second reading, adopting a pay plan for officers, employees, council-appointed officers, and constitutional officers of the city. The ordinance was voted on first reading at the May 12th council meeting, and the ordinance before us will be its second and final reading. And there is one measure, an ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Volleson and Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance to adopt and establish a pay plan for officers, employees, council-appointed officers, and constitutional officers for the city effective July 1st, 2025, providing for certain salary adjustments, authorizing specific annual pay supplements, providing for an effective date, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Any discussion by council? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Excuse me, aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance passes. Thank you. We don't have any ordinances or resolutions for consideration, so we move on to item 11, motions and miscellaneous business, inquiries or comments by the mayor and members of council. Anyone? But I do have one item, which I believe you all have. We've started a new program as part of our council proceedings that has been brought to us by our city manager, Ms. Turner. which is a city council member initiative. And I'd like to introduce an initiative today to explore the logistics and study the cost associated with placing a dedication sign at the traffic circle located at Colonial Avenue and McNeil Drive in honor of Dr. Robert Sandel, who is retiring after 25 years of leadership and has overseen exponential growth of Virginia Western Community College. And so at this time, if there's concurrence or consensus among council, then we'll refer this to the city manager to bring back the details and our city attorney to bring forward a resolution for our consideration at the June 2nd meeting. General consensus? All right, cool, thank you. The only other thing I have is that I got a citizen request regarding the water at Thrasher Dog Park and a request that it be turned on.
Thank you.
So I said I'll see what I can do. So thank you all for that. All right, we don't have any vacancies or appointments to fill this afternoon. So council meeting will stand in recess for closed meetings and thereafter reconvene at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. Thank you all.